Welcome to Biggest Geekus. We are your hosts. I am Joe.
I'm Randy.
This is episode 53, almost as old as us, of our podcast, and the date is whatever today is.
Wednesday, September 15th, dude.
September 15th, Wednesday, 2021.
Yeah. Oh.
Still 2021.
We're still in it.
Still in it.
In it to win it.
So how's it going?
Pretty good. Getting some fencing done in my yard started today.
Did that get delayed? I thought you were supposed to start last week.
The dude is really good. And I talked with him like 3 months ago, and he had work up until now. And if you call his work phone, he's scheduled out till November now.
Yeah.
So he just
keeps a lot of that.
Busy. Yeah. So he's getting it done, and he's going to he got the post in today. He's going to put the concrete in. He's got a little family thing he's going to do over the weekend. So that's it. Then he's going to come back next week and say by the end of the week should be all done.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Now no one can get to you. Yeah.
No one. I'm utterly protected. Chain link stops all things, including bullets.
Oh, it's chain link.
Yeah.
You didn't do a privacy fence?
With the prices of wood. Oh boy. Trust me, this was enough. Yeah. This chain link's not cheap even by itself.
Oh, okay. You got some kind of delay going on your end.
So did you.
We delayed.
You were delayed. Don't blame me.
I am precisely on time, just like a wizard is.
Right. Dude, speaking of that, I have been listening to a couple of YouTube guys that talk about Lord of the Rings, something about the broken sword, a couple others, and like they'll have little YouTube discussions about who really is Tom Bombadil. What if Gandalf got the Ring of Power?
Oh,
what
okay.
If Galadriel did? And talking about the first age and the second age, and it's kind of going in deep. And it's like I just watched one on the Balrogs. Apparently, there was 13 or 14 Balrogs during the age of Morgoth, and that one Durin's Bane, the one that Gandalf killed and slew him in Moria, was one of the few that after this big fight had fled. After several Balrogs were killed, a couple fled and hid. They knew where two were. They didn't know where a couple others were. So there could be other. I was just thinking it's really great fodder if you were to run a Middle Earth campaign. There's actually a place to have a Balrog, which would really suck because they were terrifying.
When you say the big fight amongst each other?
No, they came to. First of all, I don't know if I don't go too far down this rabbit trail, but have you heard of Ungoliant?
No.
She is a spider creature. She birthed one spider in Moria that almost killed Sam and Frodo.
Yes.
She's like 10 times, 15 times bigger than Shelob. She and Morgoth, I think it was Morgoth, were made a deal, and they're trying to beat the Valar, I think. And so the spider kept feeding off things, like it was growing massive, and eventually they captured the Silmarils, and Morgoth had two of them, and she said, "Give me one. I want to eat it so I can become powerful." And he said, "No." He goes, "If you don't, I want to eat you." And so she got so tough she couldn't kill Morgoth, and then the threat of her summoned the Balrogs. So like 13 Balrogs took to just fight her off, not kill her.
Wow.
So she's like the size of she's a kaiju. She's that big. And so she was just ridiculous. But anyway, and then there was some fight with the I don't remember all the details, but I'm sure some expert could correct me here. But it was cool. I love listening to those YouTube channels. They're so neat. You get to hear
kaiju-sized spider. A kaiju-sized spider.
Yeah,
wow.
One of them. Wow. Yeah, she's the mother of all of them, of those spiders of Mirkwood and stuff. So pretty cool stuff. I guess that stuff was from the Extended Tales and the Silmarillion and stuff like that. So
right.
Anyway, that's kind of what I've been into reading. So how about you?
I would just as a addition to that, I don't know how much he goes into it on his channel. He likes to poke fun at the progressives. Just some guy.
Yeah.
He's like a big Tolkien, I don't know, scholar isn't the right word, but he's
Big
deep
fan.
into he's a big fan, deep into all the lore. So I'm not sure how much he gets into it though.
Yeah, because recently he got upset about some Tolkien people were kind of blaspheming the books. I mean, they were doing they
in
had
essence,
some kind of, yeah, they really were. I mean, they were
yeah.
like having this, they're trying to say, oh, there's these transgender characters in Lord of the Rings. You're stupid.
Yeah.
You're projecting your own beliefs. That is not at all what's happening. That was
Right.
nowhere in Lord of the Rings. You can make some literary garbage argument. I won't listen to it. It's garbage. I don't believe it. No way.
So yeah, essentially it's a big Tolkien club.
Yeah.
That likes some of Tolkien's stuff. I would say not much, but then likes to project a bunch of garbage into it, and say things like, you know, orcs are black people and all this other stuff.
Right.
And so let's basically they want to reinterpret Tolkien with present day progressive, super progressive lenses.
Probably some version of critical theory. So we can't question it.
Yeah,
it's critical theory. Absolutely right. No question.
You can't question it. It's all good.
It's all good. So anyway, yeah. How about you? Anything exciting with you? We played D&D though. Remember that?
We did. Mudsword D&D. We're fixing D&D.
We are. It's going to be perfect when we're done.
Not really, but it'll be good.
No,
it'll be perfect to us.
Yes, for us. Us and our 5 or 10 friends, 15 friends, they'll like it because we'll make them play it.
Yeah.
I don't care if you don't like it. You can't play any other D&D. You're playing Mudsword.
Yeah, that's what we're playing.
We'll talk more about it in the Mudsword segment.
Yes. So the next thing in the agenda here is the contest, which is at a standstill.
Oh, okay. Haven't hit 50 yet. I really should put some prizes up, shouldn't I?
Yeah, we need a new set of prizes, and
that will be done next episode.
Yeah. Yes, it would be good to be actually done well prior to next episode, so that I can have something ready on the website next episode. So as soon as you can decide it, let me know.
Maybe even tonight before we get off here, I'll just pick some out.
Okay.
Bounce them off you.
No pressure.
Bounce them off your head. No pressure. I got a bunch of stuff I don't need. So
right.
Sweet.
All right. So we want to go into call-ins before we do the
let's do some call-ins. Then we got some quick treats for our people listening.
Let's see here. Share screen. I almost paused or stopped recording. I was getting ready to hit the wrong thing.
People need to hear my dulcet tones.
Yes, they do. Share.
Naming conventions are interesting. Personally, I really detest making up character names for my characters. It's just a chore, and I'm not that interested in it. If something comes out later, that's great. I'd almost rather start as the fighter, and then through emergent play, name them something as I go. But that part of the character creation process, especially, when they're like, oh, name your character as first part of character generation. I hate that. I'm trying to do better as far as uniformity in naming when I run games anymore. Pull everything from the same kind of group like you guys are talking about. But one of my big problems is English is, my first language, and I have a hard enough time with English. I can't stand when there are crazy names and names that I can't pronounce, which are most names. So that frustrates me when I'm playing a game and I can't pronounce anything.
Dude, my wife feels your pain, Jason. When she plays, Joe's heard her say it. She wishes I would just name people John, Bob, Paul, Phil, Dana, Laura. Just use normal names. She would be happy if our campaign world had John Smith as a NPC.
Yeah, I like fantastic names or fantasy sounding names, but sometimes something that happened when we were playing Saturday, I was using the random name generator, and it just it may have been before that. We might have talked about it last episode. Random name generator for fantasy characters just looks like random syllables or random a letter, like 1, 2, 3 letter combinations, and then those are combined, and it looks fairly. The first couple of times I did it and I reloaded it, it just they didn't look like names. They just looked like made up things.
Yeah, and I think that's where Jason's coming from.
Yeah,
hard to.
And I tell you, if you look at some older D&D stuff, I don't know about the new stuff so much, but older D&D monster names could be just murder, like the exact chittle chattel.
You're reading my mind, dude.
Yeah. And I'm sure somebody over at TSR who made that at the time knew how to pronounce it, or maybe they didn't. They might have made that and said, have fun with that, geeks.
It's funny though, Jason. I actually love making my names. I love thinking about them. I don't know if I'm good at it, but I'm happy with the names I come up with. I'm rarely disappointed in a name that I create for my characters. NPCs sometimes, but not characters. I enjoy that part of it, and it's not always the first thing I come up with. I understand what he's saying. You almost want to wait till you see what he's like and then pick a name, but it'd be kind of weird to play a character at first session and not have a name. But that's just because I maybe it's just the habits I'm into. What's your character's name? I like to put that on I use initiative with the little index card flipped over the GM screen. So I like to have character names on there. But, if someone said I don't have a name yet, I'd be okay. I wouldn't be upset.
There's an old Western trope, especially with Clint Eastwood movies, where he plays the same no-name character in several movies, or they're similar, especially with Pale Rider. They didn't really have a name for him, I don't think.
I think they call him the man with no name. I think that's his name throughout that trilogy.
Right.
And there's a trilogy where they call him that. And what about the one, My Name is Nobody?
And that guy too. No, he had a name. He did have a name.
Oh, okay.
But that was a trope for him. But I'm pretty sure one of them, him and his brother Bambino, they said his name. I just can't remember what it was.
Oh, okay. That was a really cool, weird movie.
Yeah. Well, there was 2 or 3 of them.
Oh, were there? I'll have to
hunt
those down then.
There was one with a fairly popular Western actor too from back in the day. Can't remember his name. But yeah, the no-name character can work, and they do it a lot too in other media, in other movies, where there's a dude, and for a while it can take a while to find out who he is. But usually those are loner types situations, not groups.
That's true. I would say though, for the fantasy name generator, Joe, and even for Jason, if you use the fantasy name generator, be a little more specific. Like say, Dwarven fantasy name generator, or even more like say, I can even say English Renaissance name generator, and they'll pop up. They tend to do a little better that way. There tends to be some consistency. Scottish name generator. They're not perfect, but you give them more information, the generators tend to get a little better. But you're right. If you say dragon names, sometimes they'll create the most unpronounceable pile of crap. Yeah.
Which might be fine for dragons.
Right.
Because this is the only this name is can only be pronounced properly in Draconic anyway.
Right.
So that would make sense for that kind of thing.
What should we call
maybe a PC could be that way too, especially if it's from a weird race.
Yeah.
That in our language it's pronounced blah, 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 but you can call me Bill or whatever.
Yeah. Or demonic true names, they could have their name they go by. They call me Thresher. Is that your name? Not really. You couldn't pronounce it. I wouldn't tell you anyway.
Right. Right. And one of our favorite other podcasts, of course I'm going to forget the name of it.
That one, our favorite. Shadow the GM, Clerics Ringmail.
Manicore, Tail of the Manicore. There we go.
Yeah.
Tail of the Manicore. A couple of they picked up a couple of retainers, and during the course of 2 or 3 episodes, one of the retainers' name changed. So it was this, and then he had the other retainer give him a nickname, which was more amusing. Rumble Belly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so stuff like that can happen too. You can
Yeah.
have a name to start out with that's maybe a placeholder, and you can come up with a different name later on, and then say, yeah, well, this is what the nickname I got from whatever source,
Yeah.
and that's the excuse for changing it to something else.
You could even do that with your characters like Brock and Butch. We talked about how I'm not a big fan of those sort of names, but they call him Butch because he's a butcher.
Yeah.
And then, come on, Butch. And maybe that's not your name at all.
Right.
And Brock, too. Maybe, come on, his head like a rock, call him Brock.
Right. And with Butch, he was born in a vat.
Right.
And the day after he was brought out of the vat, he was sold to somebody.
Right.
So he could even, I think we even talked about this, but, we haven't played with Butch in a long time, and it is what it is. But we talked about finding his real name, which would be part of finding his creator, who he wants to stick his sword through.
Right. Yeah. I'm pretty confident he would not like his creator.
Right.
I know exactly who that dude is, and he's a weirdo. He won't like him.
I believe it. I mean, he grows people in vats. Of course he's a weirdo. And sells them.
Flesh pots.
All right. Are we ready to move on from names?
Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
Jason,
that's what I meant. I say Joe. I never think Joe.
Hey guys, it's Patrick. The YouTube group name you were looking for is Viva La Dirt League. They do a whole bunch of those skits about the absurdities of gaming. And they have a brand new series that just started called D&D Logic. And their very first episode deals with the first level player that has a absurdly complex or complicated or overdone backstory. I think you get a kick out of it. But I'll continue listening and talk to you guys later. Bye.
Viva La Dirt League. That's right. They are hilarious. They got a new one. We got to check that D&D Logic out.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Thanks, Patrick.
Hi guys, Pat again. The Kickstarter for Tenaris that you were talking about, I believe that it started its life as a board game called Arena the Contest. That board game had an expansion called Arena Tenaris Adventures, I think it was called. I checked out the Kickstarter, and indeed it's the same world from that board game. I just think it's kind of interesting that a role-playing game started its life as a board game, and I guess all along they kind of wanted to make a role-playing game, so they just kind of cut out the middleman and went straight to the RPG and chose 5th edition as their horse to ride in on. But just fun fact. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
That's a pretty cool. By the way, that's a smart move by them. I didn't know that, Patrick. What's funny? I know that Gygax and Arneson created a brand new type of game and role playing, but it seems like there's a lot of games now. Board games inform role playing games, which inform card games, which inform role playing games. It's very kind of incestuous in some ways. Magic the Gathering is a card game, but now there's a lot of Magic the Gathering D&D type stuff. Theros and Ravnica, and Oshak, and then of course Tenaris was a board game that became an RPG, and some RPG, and Talisman. I have that one. Talisman's an RPG now, Joe. Did you know that?
I heard about that.
Yeah. So, that's kind of interesting.
It's kind of weird though, with Talisman especially, because Talisman was made kind of it seems like as kind of an homage to D&D,
right? And
then, then there's no real need to make it its own thing, except if you piece together all the stuff about it that made it its own setting, then you make a setting,
right? And
then you're good.
But it's interesting that they made Talisman. I do believe Talisman was probably made inspired by D&Ders, and then now Talisman, the role-playing game, is made from those who played Talisman. Yeah. I think it's. I don't mind that sort of stuff. I think it's kind of cool. But I think Talisman's kind of the beginning of some of the board games like Hero Quest, Descent, which we're going to talk about a new version of Descent today. and a few other things. So that are kind of like quasi role playing. You skip the actual role playing and just do the combat. So,
Right.
Yep.
And speaking of Kickstarter and their hijinks, there was right before we get to Taylor's call-ins. So I think we talked about it on the show. There was a Kickstarter, and it was about a setting. It's going to be in 5th edition. That's all but in name Dark Sun.
Well, that Red Dawn thing.
Red Dawn. It got canceled.
I heard that. Why?
And I haven't looked at Kickstarter in the last today to see if it's maybe been reinstated or whatever. And there's no real details yet probably because the creators of it don't want to burn any bridges.
They funded though, right? Didn't they fund
funded? It funded.
Huh.
But it got canceled. It got taken out off of Kickstarter before the end of the campaign, so nobody got their credit cards charged apparently. Right. So anybody who backed it still is unless somebody who's listening to this backed it.
Yeah, if they know why, let us.
Or just know if the fact about getting charged or not. I don't think they were.
That's usually not. I've kickstarted a lot of things. You usually don't get charged till it funds and it's over. Once it's over.
Once the campaign's done. Yeah.
Once the campaign's done. And my suspicious side of me says because I wonder because they mentioned slavery and they caught some flack from somebody, or if it was some other thing.
Well, it was all too much like Dark Sun from back in the day, except for the Dark Sun. I mean, I don't think it's such that they can sue them,
right, copyright thing.
Well, it could be Wizards said, "Hey, that's too much like Dark Sun," but they had to have gotten approval to say it's 5th edition, a 5th edition thing. Maybe not. They might have gotten a cease and desist from Wizards.
Yeah, that's
too much like Dark Sun.
Yeah, I guess that's possible.
That's the other. I just thought of that. So that might be.
I heard some. I don't know how WotC rolls, but I've heard there are some companies that. Well, I have an example. Weird Frontiers, which is an RPG I kickstarted. I'm still waiting on. It's a Weird West game with DCC. You've heard me talk about it. Mm-hmm. They had to change their name from Dark Trails to Weird Frontiers because they were stepping on the toes of Dark Trails Cthulhu. And from what I've heard, the guy that ran it, he said Chaosium was super cool about it. They're like, hey, this could be really confusing for our fans, and we want you to do well. Would you mind changing that? Because we kind of did have this Dark Trails first. So they didn't try to go litigation. They just said, hey, let's not have confusion on the bookshelf. And you know what? I respect that. That's actually fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
And maybe WotC did that to them, and they're going to rejigger it, a little bit. Maybe WotC said, but I mean, WotC could have said, look, but I can imagine WotC being as big as they are. Said, look, don't make us sue you. I mean, if they did it, don't make us sue you. You better take it down. But who knows? And we're speculating. We have no idea.
No idea. That's why I said that's just something that occurred to me. It could be a cease and desist. It could be our progressive friends out there who don't like words like slavery that exist, actually a thing.
Okay.
And bad people do that kind of stuff. And there's bad people in it, and they do that bad stuff. And,
Sorry.
I guess they probably just wanted a whole ton of disclaimers at the beginning.
Yeah.
Probably.
You might get triggered if
content warning.
You don't like the word slave. So I guess, I don't know. Who knows? Beat the crap out of me.
It looked nice. It was the art was wonderful.
I was considering backing it. It crossed my mind.
It sure did.
Yep.
Mine too. All right. Enough of that. Let's go on with Taylor.
Hey guys, this is Taylor of Clerics Ringmail, talking about programming using Unity. I can't use it. I'm a Java guy, so I end up having to use either libgdx or JMonkey Engine if I want to go 3D. But that said, you may have heard most Java guys wear glasses. You know why that is because Java guys don't see sharp. Industry secret.
Thank you, Taylor. That was funny.
But I'm dumb. Beautiful. He's a sharp cookie.
Yeah.
Sharp cookie.
Needing
That's
to
weird.
think new school in order to introduce more players to the OSR is a lie. That's like saying in order to get more people into fishing, you should go fishing on a baseball field, and instead of a rod and reel, you should use a bat and a ball. That's not bringing people into the OSR. That's killing the OSR and integrating with the mainstream of the industry. I ran a DCC game, OSR or OSR adjacent, depending on who you ask, for total RPG newbies back in 2016. Coworkers who'd never played D&D before. I ran it like I run BX, and they ate it up. One of them lost 5 of his 4 starting characters. We did a funnel to start, and he had to borrow a character from another better player, while the other didn't lose a single one for several sessions. For them, there was enjoyment in empowerment.
That's something
Right
we're going
on.
to be bringing up with Mudsword about the losing the characters and stuff. Not precisely, but somewhat similar.
Yeah. I agree with him, though. You don't have to do new school to get new players.
No.
In fact, you might do better off being purely old school so they can go, wow, that's pretty different than the way I play D&D.
I don't think you have to be old school. I don't think you necessarily have to run BX. Not necessarily.
Mhm.
I think as long as you're in hard mode, hard mode is pretty much, I guess you could call old school hard mode, but correct me, you OSR folks out there can correct me, the whole what is OSR thing, whatever.
Right.
But I think it's more mentality. In 5th edition, it's kind of hard to run OSR unless you change it around. You know, you take away some stuff to make the characters survivable.
Less survivable.
Even with dumb moves.
Right.
So, yeah.
They said, I want to do X, and then I gave them a mechanism, or sometimes no mechanism. If a trap was on a spindle and they shoved a pitchfork in the gear, the trap would no longer move, no roll necessary to disarm. They loved that. They didn't look at their character sheet at all during the session until combat came up and they had to adjust hit points, or until they found some treasure and had to write it down on the inventory. None of them one of them even asked for graph paper. He was mapping the dungeon as we explored it. I did not ask for a mapper. He just did it. He was naturally an old school soul. The key to bringing new blood into the OSR is to recruit the right people.
Agree.
You know what he's saying?
It's not for everyone.
Gatekeeping.
I really think
Or
some part of our Mudsword endeavor should have that word in it.
Agreed. And it's curating. I mean, you're curating it.
Yeah.
You're looking for a type of play, and you can call it gatekeeping. I don't even care, because to me, gatekeeping is not a bad word. You want certain people in the games that you're doing, so they want to do what you're doing. There's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
Recruiting. Recruiting. Choose certain players. Say, if you don't enjoy this, you're not going to have fun at my game. But hey, give it a try. Look, you hated it.
Yes. Imagine if there were no standards. And these aren't not standards per se.
Right.
It's just mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
But imagine the military recruiting and just saying, the only requirement we have from you is that you can sign your name. And then someone say, oh, don't want to do that. Okay, just raise up your hand and say yes. And now you're a soldier.
Right.
No testing, no seeing if they're the right kind of person, none of that.
I remember too, Taylor made a comment on a different note, Joe, that some guy was a natural mapper. All my players back in the day, Taylor, they were as resistant as crap. It was all but when they sat down. I'm not mapping. You guys did not like the idea of mapping.
I'm no servant.
It's your job. You're the DM. You got the map, right? Yeah, that's fun times.
Oh, yeah.
As a gross oversimplification, new school games appeal to an enjoyment of being the protagonist, of building a character and customizing it to make it your own, and of beating challenges using the resources at your disposal. Detractors will say the buttons on your controller, so to speak. Old school games appeal to an enjoyment of being forced or empowered, as was the case of my newbie players, and as old school enthusiasts will say, to think outside the box, of managing several diminishing resources, hit points, rations, torches, live hirelings, concurrently, and of being able to overcome challenges using your wits. These are two different styles of play. Some folks enjoy both, some folks enjoy one or the other, but you don't need to sacrifice either to bring more people together.
Right.
That's funny. I agree with you, Taylor. Thinking outside the box, those, now that I think about it, both those type of styles of play, and then let's call them the using your controllers. I'm not being derogatory with new school. I like new school games. I think Mudsword might have to be a mixture of. I don't think you're gonna be able to put it into old or new school. It's gonna have a mixture of things. Because honestly, a game where I don't mind a game where you're using your character sheet to defeat foes that are appropriately challenging. I don't mind the idea of it, that players play that way, but sometimes it gets really boring if every challenge is just appropriate. And old school, the drawback to defeating things by your wits is sometimes players use their wits and they have a creative solution that narratively just sounds utterly ridiculous. You know what I mean? Let's do this, this, and this. That's really weird for you to even think to do that. But okay, that's a weird kind of solution. But it's all right. I mean, it's not the end of the world.
So, we want more players. Play with the people who like what you like. Play with kids who don't know the rules, or with adults who don't want to have to think about it after work, and instead, they play it by ear as though they were in the experience. OSR has your back, thinking outside the box. Play with wargamers, or with video gamers who play survival games. They enjoy tracking chits. They enjoy managing hirelings, their troops. OSR's gotcha. Resource management. Play with people who enjoy logic puzzles or tactics games. OSR's got you there too. Overcome the environment and bypass a seemingly insurmountable enemy with subterfuge. That's how you bring people to the hobby. Market the game you're running to the people who will enjoy it, not to the people who are already sold on something it's not. And don't worry if a game or style doesn't appeal to everyone. It's not necessary for our big gamer family to come together and kumbaya. Play what you like, and I encourage everyone
Preach.
to play what they like as well. Too long didn't listen. OD&D is not a Model T. OD&D is the Kawasaki KX450. 5e is the Indian Challenger. Jason would probably be able to explain the metaphor better than I can. Oh, and 4th edition is probably a Vespa.
A Vespa.
Boom. I don't get the other two references, but I know what a Vespa is. Of course, I just like to laugh at 4th edition. So
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Indian Challenger is a motorcycle of some sort. And so I saw it. I know that because where I ate dinner tonight, there was, I think, an Indian Challenger out front. It said Indian on it. I assume that's a Challenger. I could be wrong. Jason, call us in and clarify.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah. Old school not being a Model T is, of course, subjective.
Yeah.
So, everybody's welcome to their opinions. I don't think every rule set. I don't think every rule from the old edition is good.
Nope.
And I don't know. That's probably not what he's saying, but I think he's saying the basic structure is, and it might be. I don't agree, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm more one step up. I think the more I look at it, even though we're probably going to take some stuff out of it because some of it isn't great, but BECME is more, I think, more my speed than old school or OD&D.
OD&D is a little the white box is a little light, dude.
Mm-hmm.
A little light.
But that's all.
Some folks
love
preference.
That's all preference.
Folks love that, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Taylor plays BX, so he's closer to BECME than he is OD&D, isn't he?
I don't know.
He
Talks a lot about chainmail.
Oh, that's right. So he might be. Yeah, he might be a little more.
Chainmail.
So thanks, Jason, Patrick, and Taylor. Appreciate it, bud.
Yes, thank you, all callers, and we're going to go to our resident Facebook message spammer Silent Josh.
Yes.
He sends us all the articles that ever were.
That is now his name, Silent Josh.
Silent Josh.
We have, Joe had mentioned that last time. So I picked out, 6 of them. 2 of them are tightly connected. So
yes. So I'll start from the top.
Yeah, do it.
And I've got we're not going to go into detail. The links will all be in the show notes, and you can read them and laugh at them like we did, a lot of them.
Yep.
So the first one is DM's Workshop. This is pretty mundane. D&D 5th edition, how their tiers and levels work.
Yeah. I think it's clearly he's a 5e guy in this article.
Yeah.
And he's pretty much talking about all characters from levels 1 to 20. I thought it was interesting. He made the comment they're not demigods at any point, and that's fine. I mean, can you see a 20th level character? You could say, okay, he's not a demigod, but I would say, you know what? He really, really manipulates powers that would make him seem like a demigod to most people.
Yeah.
If you can create a demi-plane, you're pretty boss.
Yeah. That's pretty.
But
that's skirting the edge.
It is, but he breaks
anything.
it. Yeah, he breaks it into tiers, right? So, what did you think of the article in general?
Ho hum.
Yeah, I've seen it
It's
before.
5e stuff. Not very interesting to me.
It's not just 5e, it's just the way he interprets things. I've seen it, a person that graduates college is a first level character, a second level character. And when they get to the second tier, which is like 5th level, they may have a PhD. And
I've heard, that's those kinds of comparisons have been made. I've never liked any of that because it's not really precise.
It's not terribly useful.
No,
it's not terribly useful. And I've seen it before. It wasn't badly written. I mean, it's a decent read, but it's as long as you want to hear stuff you already heard before.
Yeah.
But we're old dudes. So you want to bounce back and forth? You want me to do the next one?
Sure, go ahead.
So ScreenRant.com had one called Dungeons Dragons Thaco Rules Complicated. How stupid Thaco was. This dude, look, buddy. Okay. I realize you can't do math. I mean, I understand it. He made a comment like how dumb it was. You just add in current 5e, there's, in current D&D, even commented from 3e and beyond, you just add numbers, and they've even cut out the adding as much, so it's so much better. Really? Is the math in role-playing games ever that complicated? Hold on. I'll stop. As a math teacher, let me tell you, it's not.
It's not.
I mean, we were middle school, early middle school, 7th grade, playing D&D. And now our school, we're kind of backwoods. We didn't have algebra yet, but I'm not sure I'd seen a negative number until I played D&D. And guess what? It wasn't tricky. I figured it out. And he makes a comment about Thaco charts. Okay, buddy, I know you're not listening. There were no Thaco charts. Thaco was a number that simplified the charts from 1E.
Yeah.
So if you have a Thaco of 10, that means you hit an armor class of 0 with the roll of a 10. Now, what's weird for a lot of players now, Thaco, your armor class descended. So an armor class of -1 is better than 0. 0 is better than 1. 1 is better than 2. So if you have a Thaco of 10 and you have to hit an armor class of 5, right? You do 10 minus 5, which is 5. So on the D20, you need a 5. That's it.
Yeah.
It's subtraction, not addition. Okay. So if anybody's wondering, subtraction is in some sense the inverse of addition. Not terribly hard.
No.
So
it's no more really. I guess you could say perhaps it's more difficult, but it really isn't.
The only argument you can make, it's a little less intuitive, like the idea of why is your armor class lowering? And I've heard Gygax make an argument.
I was just saying the difference between addition and subtraction as far as difficulty factor. Yeah.
Well, I will say this. The operation of subtraction does have more complications mathematically due to something called closure, the whole numbers. But really, as far as the numbers you're dealing with, positive and negative whole numbers are integers. And I'm talking not fractions, not decimals, like Joe said earlier before the podcast. It's really pretty simple. And this dude was like, man, hit this armor class, you roll a 10. One lower is a 9, and then an 8. That's really hard. I don't know how to do that. It's like, you need a chart. No, you don't need a chart. I remember seeing Thaco and thinking, that's awesome sauce. Charts gone.
Yeah.
You
did lose something, but that's a different story. You did lose something because in the old charts, when you got to especially for high level fighters, when you got to a certain point in those charts, the numbers would get negative on one end. and those would end up being extra damage you would do.
Yes. And also on the other end, if you had multiple 20s, every 20 had some kind of effect too. I think you couldn't.
You'd need a +1 weapon or +2 weapon or
Yeah,
something like that.
something to hit
Something
it.
like that.
Something like that. It was pretty.
Yeah.
But I liked how
But-
Thaco. Go ahead.
But the only other caveat to that is the only thing you could say chart-wise about Thaco is the character sheets. You would write your Thaco in when you figured out what you would need to hit armor class 0, and then you could write out the rest of it easily. So you would have, I don't know if it's technically a chart because it's only one line.
Okay, I guess my
But
argument.
that's on the character sheet, not in the books.
But from me,
Yeah.
from my perspective, when I was at EM, I looked at it. I thought before they used to give you a little chart on your character sheet and you had to fill it out: armor class 7, armor class 6, armor class 5. But honestly, that's a serious waste of time.
It is. With
With
Thaco, you'd only need one number and you can figure it
Yeah.
out from there.
What's your Thaco? When you find the armor class, subtract it from Thaco. So if you got a Thaco of 10 hitting an armor class of -2, 10 subtract -2 is 12. You don't need the chart. You just need that one number.
Right.
But I don't know. Dude just seems like somebody that really didn't quite get it. He wanted to bag on Thaco. And look, I don't prefer Thaco. I like ascending armor class. I like base attack bonus. But in case people are listening, base attack bonus is Thaco.
Just written differently.
It's written differently. It's the modifier to hit versus the armor class description versus the dice roll.
Yeah.
So, when you add +1 to your BAB in 3rd edition, it would be the same as subtracting 1 from your Thaco. Same dealio.
Yeah.
So it's not really much of a different thing, but I guess I get it. Adding is somewhat more intuitive, quote unquote, simpler than subtraction. That is true, but not like any kind of significant degree.
No.
Not to most folks who play games. I mean, come on, get real. Not to most
Yahtzee.
people.
Yeah. Some of the things he said in it was you're constantly adding them, subtracting numbers when you play the older game. I'm like, okay, you just told me you didn't play the older game.
Right.
Because that didn't happen. I mean, you did that during combat, but you still do that during combat in 5th edition. Any game
in 3rd edition.
In 3rd
Modifiers
edition.
everywhere.
Yeah, you're doing math during combat. When you're not in combat, you're not doing math. You're doing other stuff. So
+1 from Wes, +2 from planking, +3 from this. Oh, I forgot I had a +1 from prayer.
Yeah.
We do that all the time.
Yeah. And the words he used called Thaco bizarre. Complicated.
Well, I guess if subtraction is complicated compared to addition, okay.
And barrier to entry.
Was that word used?
Now, yes, that phrase, barrier to entry. So I remember people saying there's too much math, but that didn't come up until 3rd edition.
Or it had all the little bits of pluses and minuses.
From 2nd edition on back, I never heard anybody complain about math.
No.
So I never heard anybody say, Thaco, I can't understand this. Throw their books down and go away and never play again.
Yeah.
So that's anecdotal, of course, on my part, but I never even heard anybody talk about that.
To give him some props, my wife hated Thaco, but she just didn't want to learn. She didn't want to think about negatives, and she learned on 2nd edition at the tail end.
Mm-hmm.
And she was all into the story, not at all into the mechanics. So to her, she would just say, "Tell me what I have to roll." She would do that all the time, and she would like that now. But she's learned the basics of 3rd and 5th edition to be able to play it pretty well.
Right. Just the whole that article and the math thing crap.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. All right.
So the next one is at comicbook.com, and it's about an expansion or a new game called Descent: Legends of the Dark.
Yeah.
And I read through it a little bit, and it's a Descent game. It looks like the pieces parts are all nice, like the old game and all that. The one thing I got from it that I didn't like, and I know Patrick is going to agree with me, is the app. Having an app that's necessary to play a board game. And not that I'm scared of complicated games, but
obviously
board game,
because you'll play Thaco games, so you're good with complicated.
but a board game is complicated enough without me having to pull out my phone. I don't want to have my phone out when I'm when I'm gaming anymore. Used to be I liked
Yep.
having an electronic device, but nowadays keep it in my pocket. I don't even look at it, and my head's up, and I just play. A
Mhm.
board game would be very similar. Give me
Yep.
my parts and pieces and stuff. Let me roll the dice. An app? Are you kidding me? This doesn't make sense.
It didn't make me as mad. But I do get it. I mean, it doesn't normally, it's like mad's a strong word. Joe never gets mad. But my point is, it just seems it's one more doodad.
Yeah.
So the phone is no more doodad. And they even talked about the problems with it. How during cut scenes, and if you push the button too quick, you could skip things and couldn't see all your options. You move into a room, you hit the app tells you your choices. I think in theory that sounds cool to a lot of modern people. I'm sure it'll be popular because the pieces are beautiful, the minis are beautiful. That's not shocking. Descent was good before for that. I'm just not really into a game much at all. And this is the problem with Descent. Legends of the Dark is the same as Descent. If I'm going to set up this gigantic board and have all these chits and pieces where I'm just playing a character going through a dungeon, let's just play some D&D. Seriously. That's kind of how I feel about that kind of game.
Yeah.
At least Talisman is abstract enough and there's not as many moving parts that it's just going around like a Monopoly board, rolling a D6, that it feels not quite like D&D. But Descent feels like D&D, dude.
Right.
At least the Descent we played. Remember back in the day. I mean, it's neat, but it's like, I'd rather just play D&D.
Yeah. And
Why are we not playing D&D?
and it seems like this game, Descent Legends of the Dark, doesn't know whether it wants to be a board game or a video game. Probably should pick one.
Yeah, but who knows? Again, looks nice. People might dig it. Doesn't sound like hard
I think
pass.
there are ways to integrate with stuff like this, like the cutscenes. If you had a card and said, "Oh, play this cutscene," and all you had to do is hit a button on your phone or device, tablet, whatever, to play the cutscene, that would be fine.
This is
Okay.
no good for podcasts.
No, you're
video.
holding up your phone that says werewolf in the middle.
Right. There's an app that lets me
The
manage
werewolf
werewolf app to
Yeah.
help you play werewolf. That actually looks pretty interesting. It's got a timer on it. You can do sun's fault. The sun is going down.
Not World of Darkness werewolf.
No.
This
Sit
is
around
the party game werewolf.
Yes, correct. I was just showing Joe. That's actually kind of cool.
And there's
It's got a neat
an
little
app
app.
to track that. That might be all right.
And I think you can even on one of them, you can like all the special characters, like if you're playing the wizard or the witch or the little boy or the little girl or whatever, you can I can actually type in there who's who, so I won't forget. But that would have to be if I was running a big group.
Yeah.
We usually run 10, 12 people, and so I know what everybody is.
Gotcha.
It's a handful of special characters, but kind of cool. That's kind of cool. But
Right. And that Aliens game you ran at Cabin Con had an audio file that you would play.
Yeah.
Was there a video? There was a video. It was video.
With the video, that was me. That was one that they had. A guy had made a video to go along with the introductory adventure.
Yeah,
thought
that kind of stuff works.
That adds a lot. You guys, because it looked like a guy reporting to you as you were coming back to the base. Be careful, the poops hit the fan. Yeah, that was kind of fun.
If it's integral to your gameplay where you have to hit buttons on the screen, and then if you screw that up, that sounds like a no-go to me.
And Joe, it could just be we're not groovy enough.
It might be.
It might be.
They're not selling to us.
Yeah.
This is not for us.
No. All right. The next one was this from Kedaddle.com. D&D riddles for dungeon masters and campaign planners. I like the riddles. I found some of the comments in the article weird.
Yeah.
Like one of them I wrote down. And so he got this list of 50 riddles and he breaks them into pieces that are kind of connected. And it says, and this guy makes me think like, I'm not sure if this dude actually plays D&D. Druids and dungeon masters are the ones who usually give riddles to the players to break up the actions of the game. Did you see that too? What does that even mean? Druids and dungeon masters.
Druids? I mean, the dungeon master delivers riddles through the characters, but
right.
Druids?
Maybe his experience was such that it seemed like his DM's world, druids were very riddle centric, I guess. Mysterious foresty dudes. That's possible.
Yeah. It's possible, I'm sure.
We're playing D&D.
Or he got an assignment to make a riddle thing and he just went out into the ether and that's what he got. druids
you see us playing D&D. Okay, out comes the Sphinx from the cave, and then someone walks into our house. He has a sickle and some piece of mistletoe. He's in a cloak, and he goes, "I have a riddle." What is this dude doing in my house? The druid's got to tell the riddle.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
The
It
other
took me
thing,
hours to get that stinking druid in our time set up. He's got a busy schedule.
yeah. The other thing was, he said that the poems or the riddles shouldn't be vague and have and that they should have more than one meaning.
Right.
Okay, those are at odds, because if it has more than one meaning, there's going to be some level of vagueness to them. I mean,
how much of a riddle is it if it's very direct and obvious?
And every one of his riddles had one answer.
Yes. Look, hey,
the riddles themselves, I liked a lot of them.
Me too.
But the commentary along with him is like, dude, come on.
And I honestly, I have to be honest with you though, the older I get, because we have some people, I know some people who really hate riddles. I know one guy in particular we came with really hates them. And I understand it because it can cause a game to stop. I think as a DM, you have to be willing, if the riddle is tough, if the players come up with an answer that seems to fit, probably want to give it to them just because you want the game to go on. And the point of the riddle is to add flavor, not to have the players sit for an hour and a half trying to figure a puzzle out. Because I suck at riddles myself personally. I'm not good at it.
And it's hard to come up with a riddle that you could fit in to the game that you're playing so that your players could use whatever thing that they are invested in mentally at the time.
Yes.
To aid them in solving the riddle.
Which would be ideal. If you're seeking the Tomb of Horrors, the riddle should have something to do with a Sararak if you're going to enter it, and you've learned some lore about a Sararak,
right? And
so you should be okay. Randy gave us this little pad of paper from the book, and this sheet from the book, and I wrote out something in role playing game in the story script, and you're like, oh, Asarak had this gem and blah blah blah. The answer seems to be a gem. Oh, it's the golden beetle gem of Asarak or whatever, So, yeah. Yeah. Now the next two, I'm gonna let Joe do this, but I think I know they're connected, but we probably should do them separately, even though you're probably going to want to comment. I'm assuming you're going to have a stronger opinion of the sixth one than the fifth one.
Yeah, I have some stuff written down.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Joe. This could be a topic on this could be a full-on topic. We could have quite a discussion on this.
There's a sixth one. What was the sixth one? Is that the one that you sent me on text?
Yeah, why you should hire a professional DM.
Yeah.
You get to read that one?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was a stupid article. So
first was coming.
Yes. Not the subject matter itself, I don't think, but what he, whatever. The person who wrote the article, what they said the reasons were. Anyway, let's get to the first one. Becoming a pro DM. It's on levelupcorner.com. And like with all the rest of these, there's going to be a link for you to follow if you decide to ever go to look at the show notes on our webpage. Had some real cringy signaling in it with I think with I'm trying to remember the specifics of the signaling that I thought was cringy. Like it was session 0, and you have to make sure all of your players that their backstories match up, because this is what the DM does, matches everything, and crafting this narrative. And I'm like, well, whatever. But what I wrote down in more detail was, well, apparently getting paid is what an amazing DM deserves.
Yes.
What's due to them.
Right.
Now, and maybe I'm getting hung up on words, but sheesh. I mean, really, if you're an amazing DM, it's your due to get money. It doesn't, and she doesn't get into what constitutes an awesome DM. Or he, or whatever.
No, and I think because, let's be honest, you can't. I mean, some things, yes. I think there's some characteristics that certain DMs share. I think you could talk about it, but I think a lot of people might have some preferences of what their DM does is awesome or not.
But at least that would be interesting. She
Right.
could say, or he, I can't remember. I think it was a woman who wrote this. But
Right.
anyway, she could have said, becoming a pro DM, if you want to become a pro DM, you should focus on blah, 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 5 or 6
Right.
areas. You need to get really good at these things. And then you should consider becoming a DM, pro DM. She did have some tips on what to do once you've decided to become a pro, and going
Right.
to different platforms and
Mhm.
considerations about getting paid and stuff like that.
Marketing yourself, what the
Yeah.
going rate is.
Right. But no discussion on, because when you're becoming a pro DM, she's putting the cart before the horse. The first discussion is
Mhm.
actually becoming a DM, and a good enough DM can be considered awesome and be due money for it.
Mhm.
Which is fine if you want to pay for it. That's fine. They're expecting entertainment.
Mhm.
Being a DM is now being an entertainer, apparently, and
Right.
you're paying for that. In that context, I can understand why people would want to and be willing to pay.
Do you? Yeah, I actually didn't have as much problem with this article because I thought she was trying to tell us, here's the steps you got to do. I didn't really read too much into other things. I thought the next one was a little dumber, where
Yes.
they're trying to say, and it was based, it's from the platform start playing games. Why you should hire a professional dungeon master. I thought that was a little more kind of cringeworthy.
Yes, definitely.
Because it talked a lot about
that's probably where I'm remembering
safety tools. You might be remembering that one.
That's where I'm getting that from. I can't remember the cringy signaling from the first one. I probably should have wrote some notes about
the level up was paving your own way. I thought it was more of a how to do it article, and how to do the actual, and how to actually become one, get a platform, get players, market yourself, run, how many games can you run? I thought it was cool that she said, can you run 7 games a week? And I thought, no, I couldn't do it. I mean,
you could if you ran the same game in each one.
Yeah, and she even pointed out, which I thought was very important for people that are trying to do this. Basically, if you're kind of top notch and you're doing 7 games a week and you're making the cash, you're looking at $28K a year on average for a good GM. That's what she said.
Well, if you don't have to worry about driving anywhere and you're living in somebody else's basement, 28,000 might be okay. Or if you're part of a family that you both earn, that could be okay.
I'm not knocking that. It's like, that's not a reason not to do it. I'm just saying it's not great pay.
No.
It's kind of subsistence pay.
Yeah.
And I guess, though, you could argue if you're a young dude or woman, you're like, hey, I'm playing games and getting paid for it. That's pretty sweet. But to me, I think the second one brings up, well, why should you, why you should hire a professional GM? I mean, I guess in this day and age I thought the most compelling argument was about COVID and not being able to get together face to face like last year. That seemed pretty like a pretty good move if you were, desperate for a group.
But she didn't bring that up at all.
No, not COVID particularly.
Well,
but online play.
Yeah, online play was brought up, but not. I was looking for
me too.
Why you would want to do online play.
Yeah.
And these are some good reasons why online play is superior, but I didn't see too much of that in there.
No, I didn't either. It was more and it made comments like that with professional GM, players will be more respectful. And of course she mentioned that's probably because of the money if you pay $20 for a session, you might be a little less likely to screw things up.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If you pay, what was the pricing? The pricing was pretty outrageous. And sometimes,
between $10 and $30 a pop.
Which is not. It's really for a night out. That's you can argue that's not
sure.
Deal. But so I mean, I wouldn't do it. It's a hard pass for me.
Yeah.
I would rather not play than pay. But that's because I've never had to pay, I think.
I think the dumbness from that article came from the whole safety tools angle. And the session 0 saying it's so essential to have. I mean, you have to. I mean, she was putting it in, or he was putting it in terms of these are things you have to do to have a good game, which is session 0 and safety tools. And I'm like, no, you don't have to do any of that. Now, online play with strangers, I can see it. The case being made that you need something like that there because you don't know any of them. So
Right.
that's fine. But to run, those aren't necessary to run a good game.
No.
Except with strangers.
Right.
So if
and even then, they have to me just a minimal amount of utility.
Yeah, just minimal.
Session 0 is more useful than safety tools.
Yeah, because in your session 0 or in the first 10 minutes of your first session, depending on how well everybody knows the system, and as far as how long it'll take them to make characters, or if they've already made them, you could do a 10-minute. Okay, this is how I run games. I've sent you all a thing, but I'm going to go over it verbally with you real quick. Any questions? And you don't necessarily need a whole. Well, depending on how long a session is these days, 4 hours, 1 hour.
Yeah.
You don't even need an hour to do that.
Right. No, it's a few minutes. What do you think, though? I mean, this is leading to I think part of our little bit. I sense a lot of disdain from you. Me is kind of like, if you want to do it, it's fine, but would you, if you couldn't get together with anybody and play, and you could, and your online choices were like, random garbage, hot garbage on Roll20, would you ever pay?
Play?
Could you see that being
part?
Yeah.
I've played same length of time as you have, 41 years, going on 42.
Yeah.
I've never paid somebody to DM me.
Right.
And I've never asked anybody to pay to be at my table.
Right.
It almost seems unethical in a way.
It strikes me a little bit odd, but it's not really. I don't think it is. It's an exchange of services for
different. It's different times, different kinds of people. It's fine for them. I don't think I would do it.
Yeah. And so you would choose not play rather than pay.
Yeah, I think it's I would rather wait to find a good group,
right,
than pay and not necessarily know what I'm getting into.
Right. But if it was say $10 for 4 hours, would you at least try it?
I might. $10 isn't really much to.
In a desperate situation, I'm sure it would be and it would be your last effort. I do like the comment though that was made in that article about one of the articles about. It might not be a bad way to test out a system you've never played. Hey, I want to learn how to play, I don't know, Dogs in the Vineyard. There's a weird one.
Right. So, a one shot.
Yeah.
But there's no way you could have an ongoing game like that. I wouldn't want to pay $10 a week.
For every week.
Every week? No. That's $520 to play D&D. And no,
I get you. I don't think I would either.
That's a minimum.
Yeah, and I wouldn't blast anybody who did though. Now maybe the only way they can get there, and they may like it. It could be so fun that $10 is worth it.
Yeah,
but not. I think we're just again maybe a little too old for this idea.
Yeah,
and we have right now we can't envision it because we have friends that would play with us.
Right.
So, and I have charged for a game. I have a charge when I run games at Gen Con and other places, but that's because Gen Con required it. I didn't make any money. Well, I got like free badge and stuff, but I ran 4 or 5 games that weekend and did the same thing with Paizo. They charged. I had to collect tickets and stuff like that. So when I ran for Pathfinder Society back in the day. So, but I've never really said, hey, Randy Nichols here, represent, you want to pay me $50 an hour because I'm the best GM in the universe. This seems weird.
It does. It does.
A lot of pressure too. Better put up.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Are we done with that?
I think so.
We are done with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we are moving on to our main topic, or our main topic number 1. We have 2 actually. And in this main topic, it is about world building, top down, bottom up. World building / campaign design.
Right.
Either way, because when you're making your campaign, you're kind of world building.
Sure.
In the context of game playing D&D. So when you're preparing your campaign to be run to have players in it,
Right.
top down, bottom up. It's two
Right.
different, and there's a couple different ways to even say those things, but
And there's some subcategories. That one article I showed you. I would question a couple of them, like the inside out and the outside in. That just
yeah,
seems like the same.
yeah.
But I thought there was some good little nuggets there besides the classic explanation. But go ahead. You want to give us
I'll
a
read.
definition of top down?
I will do. Top down, the designer first creates a general overview of the world, determining broad characteristics such as the world's inhabitants, technology level, major geographic features, climate, and history. From here, they develop the rest of the world in increasing detail.
Yeah. And that's I didn't note that. I could be in trouble. Citation, Wikipedia.
Citation.
That's a Wikipedia.
Citation police are going to show up at your place, dude.
That's true. So you look from the high view. That's my natural. I even did that with Mudsword in this setting, if you think about it.
Yeah.
I started from the God of Law and Chaos. I kind of had it in my 7 spheres. That's how I started. That's kind of my thing, I think, though I don't know if it's the best. It's just what I've always done. When you take a design like that, where you kind of look at the big picture, you could start as big picture of how the countries interact in the history. One of the articles talks about that. Or you could start even from mythology and how magic works and how the gods do things. That's kind of where I start from.
Right. You could just just have a broad A. You don't have to do all that stuff for it to be top down.
No.
A broad overarching concept for the campaign.
Mhm.
And then start from there.
Let me use Mudsword as an example. So currently the setting, which could go under massive changes. I'm still waiting for Joe to say, nope, no, that works for me. It's out. But there were 2 massive gods or forces called Law and Chaos. They have names. Law bound Chaos. And so the world became his to manipulate, or at least he thinks so. Chaos still has influence, even though he's bound somewhere. And the idea was he gave each one of the races a chance to be on top, to be the number one ruler. And so the world was shaped by these races. And then he had a cleansing when he was dissatisfied and gave another race. Now it's your turn. Then it's your turn. Then it's your turn. That was my top-down beginning.
Right.
Because to me, I guess because I've had friends tell me I tend to run more epic campaigns. I don't have like small goals. I tend to have massive goals for the characters. And so I think in big picture. And I naturally go from there to clerics, and then from clerics to the magic users, and then eventually to the fighters. And I don't know where the rogues are, but I'm saying the point is I start from the mythology and the magic and how things would work out from that viewpoint. What do you think? What are some? I think I may have named it. I think some advantages of this is how your world looks, and if a player comes up with a concept that doesn't really fit, then you can say, hey, can we clip some things? Can we change this here? This doesn't really fit inside this. I want to play this kind of dude. Not really.
Yeah. Saying no is good.
Yeah. But I think that's an advantage. I think you can, when you get to the table and players start doing their thing and they say, hey, what's over here? You can be like, even if you don't know, you can go, well, that is where I had thought the Elves' capital city was. So there's probably a lot of elven influence here. We're going to go to this area. They're probably going to find shrines. They're going to find small towns. They're going to find old elven enclaves that don't even realize they're not ruling anymore. So I can start having some ideas when you're adventuring through there, and it won't be like, oh crap, I don't know what's over there. Let me just roll randomly, or let me just guess. Okay, there's 5 ogres. And later on, you're like, wait a minute. The ogres were enslaved by the dwarves before the second cleansing. Maybe the ogres aren't very plentiful, and I just kind of ruined that. Or maybe it doesn't make sense. I mean, I think top down helps you to understand what's in the wide world.
Right. So top down and bottom up. So bottom up, you want me to read that, or you?
Sure. Well, yeah, maybe we should discuss them together. So go ahead.
So bottom up is the designer focuses on a small part of the world needed for their purposes. This location is given considerable detail, such as local geography, culture, social structure, government, politics, commerce, and history. Prominent local individuals may be described, including their relationships to each other. The surrounding areas are then described in a lower level of detail, with the description growing more general with increasing distance from the initial location. And I have a problem with this definition because it's starting too big. Bottom up, when you start with a location,
too many words in the definition, you mean?
Yeah, too many words.
Okay.
You should just say bottom up and that's it. No, okay. Because we want to be vague.
Right.
So to me, if you're starting from the bottom up, you're starting with a location. So a town.
Mm-hmm.
So politics, commerce, government, you don't need any of that. All you need is a town. You have a few people in there, some potential adventure locations, but all that you start with the town, and you start writing things about the town, and then other things grow around it. And then you don't need very much.
No, you don't. It's not about needing, even though, well, they do seem to say given considerable detail.
Yeah.
I would say this: if the town is small enough, my prep can be such that I can give more detail to a small town. Mm-hmm. There's 100 people. There's not that many interesting things going on.
Right.
You guys did that adventure last week. I don't want to go too much into it, but I kind of do both. I took a little tiny corner of the world and sent you on an adventure almost immediately.
Yeah.
So like what you're saying, I didn't really need that much. I needed a hook. I decided I would have someone who is a, what's the word? Patron?
Yes.
A patron guy, remember? Codswallow? Mm-hmm. And send you off to go do the thing.
Yes.
Right. So
so kind of railroady, but we were talking.
Oh yeah, sure.
But had we said Codswallow, swallow it. We're out. We don't like you.
Yeah, you could have. 100%.
It would have derailed what you had planned, kinda, but you would have been able to wrangle it in a way that one wouldn't feel like you were being the conductor.
You should see my random encounter chart.
Yeah,
I had ready. You could have done whatever you wanted.
Right.
You could have had a completely different type of adventure. 100%. I was ready.
And all of that stuff. The great thing about the internet is you can prep bottom up and top down concurrently.
You can,
by coming up with a giant concept at the top, like my campaign world thinkings. You've kind of borrowed tiny bits of it, but essentially it's a post-apocalyptic fantasy world, which is kind of like the cleansings,
right?
But you can stop with that. It's a fantasy world, post-apocalyptic. There's ruins, points of light, and you're done.
Yep.
With the top. Then you can go to the bottom and figure out a town. There's a town, a few names, half a dozen inhabitant names. You don't need to name everybody. Right. And then you can go online and find counter tables that could be appropriate that you could tinker with, everything else you would need. You might even be able to find all that stuff in the DMG.
Oh yeah, and I can't recall the name, but like the little town of Bilgewater on the coast next to a large set of cliffs, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where you started. And that's it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Because everybody at the table, especially our table, has in their mind what this town looks like. It's all going to, everybody's is going to be a little different from everybody else's. We don't need to have everything drawn out for us. We already have a village in our head, and that's good enough. And so
I think sometimes it's better not to fill in, let the player's imagination fill in the details. And I think you're right. I was going to say you can do both. But thinking about advantages, what's an advantage of starting small and doing the bottom up? Like you said, you're talking about starting really tiny, like I did. You have the one nice little patron. Yeah. You know, he didn't really send you on your way. I kind of had a little story around it, but
the more of the top that you do, the more chance you run into the bottom conflicting with what you've done at the top. So you got to be a little careful, do little bits at a time both ways, or be happy with trashing what you've figured out,
and
be able to deal with it. You don't have to be happy, but you can deal with it.
Correct. I think it's a thing where my whole idea of the God of Law and God of all that stuff. If I do go too far into that, or if you go down a road and I let you do it, I mean, I go, yeah, we're going to do this. And she goes, there's this kind of group here, isn't there? I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll do that. The elves are like this over here. And next thing you know, I'm like, oh, that would have probably happened the way I had it set up. But my top-down view is so far away from the players. They get it. Okay, the Templars or the lawgivers, those clerics, they worship this one God. That's about all and he's very lawful. Okay.
And the
outside
players,
of that,
go ahead.
no, outside of that, who cares?
Right, and the thing is our characters could go in a direction. I don't know if it's possible. We could go in a direction that kind of renders a lot of that moot.
Yeah.
Like, you throw out a couple of factions, and we're like, we don't like those guys. We're going to go over here because this sounds more interesting. So
I heard there's an island out there. We're hiring this captain to go out to an island. Oh,
right.
Okay.
So then what it could do is say that your top part could be how everybody perceives it. And maybe it's a legend.
Yep.
May not exactly be completely accurate.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing about the top. The top is usually so far away from where the characters are at that it could just be how you first explain it, could be just what the characters know. And it may just be, could be propaganda. It could be just legends and stories. And when you get down to the nitty gritty, you might find it's in the longer it takes you to get there, the easier it is for you to, modify things. So you could have the legend, what is legendary, and what's actual can be just a version of that.
Yeah. And this is a weird question I put on here. I don't know. I said played, run both. I think run is be a DM is the best you can answer. You don't really know what you're playing, do you?
No, there's no way for you to really know unless the DM tells you.
Yeah. So running it, you've run a few games. I've run a bunch. I have done both. I've had where I've done massive top down design to where I knew how I was going to start the game. You know what I'm saying? Whereas in this Mudsword, I'm like, I've done a top down design, and you mentioned how I hit some of your ideas. I'd forgotten some of it. I just remember it was points of light and it was kind of post-apocalyptic. Yeah. So this has plenty of room to change. And I remember some things too, something about some spiders somewhere. I would love to have that as part of this world. You have some really good ideas. So we definitely can bring it. Yeah, absolutely bring it in together. And I want it to be I want this to be a collaborative thing. So I'm not going too far because I don't want to set anything in stone and then get my butt hurt whenever you say, I don't really like that. I'd rather do this. I'm like, okay.
See, in factions that I've thought of are a good middle ground. So they're not too far in the stratosphere as far as the big picture, and they're definitely not down into the nitty gritty, but they're in the middle. So you can have factions that aren't completely developed. So let's say the spider group, right? So there's a Shelob type spider who's mostly, it's a combination of Shelob and the Tarask. So right, so not almost physically, but conceptually. What I was
talking about, kind of like Ungoliant.
Yeah. So conceptually, you got this spider creature that's always hibernating, and there's always some kind of threat of her waking up.
Right.
And she has, the rumor is she communicates with these witches, the Sisterhood of Witches, to do her bidding, and they're evil. Well, they're witches, so obviously they're evil.
Right.
So in my conception of the world, you don't have PC witches.
No.
The witches follow. I didn't give her a name yet.
Right.
But they Sisterhood of the Web. Those are the witches.
Cool. Good.
And they do evil stuff. All kinds of really nasty things. They kidnap children. If they can kidnap girls, they usually try to raise them as other sisters. And
there you go, kind of a hag-like property.
The boys, they end up doing other things too. That you could just take. Imagine what evil witches would do to young boys.
Everything from eating to other things.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. So not good. And
charming them to be their guardians when they mature, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I had kind of forgot your details. So that's that when you mentioned that I just really touched it. I remember the spider. I thought it was a spider kingdom. I'm like, I absolutely want that in the world. That's going to be cool. And and she could be, if I wanted to marry it, she could be some powerful agent of chaos. That she's not purposefully. She's not like, I'm an agent of chaos, but my chaos power god's like, yeah, I like that. I like the way you spin those webs, chick. Do it.
And there's tiny bits. You can use tiny bits in the lower thing. You could have an enemy who's a witch, or you could have patron, who's a witch posing as a good person. There's ways to that. Then the players don't even have to know about it until later on. So that would be a thing. A faction like that would be a thing that you would introduce after you've played a few sessions. The characters have some momentum. Everybody survived first to third level and stuff like that, and they're not in imminent danger of being killed by a stray arrow. So
I almost feel like we're coming to a conclusion that, and I think I am completely in this camp. I like to use both approaches at the same time.
Yeah.
When I build my adventures early on, it's bottom up.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm thinking about the world, I think from the top down.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a propensity of, I am a fan of Planescape. Therefore, I'm a fan of planes. I'm a fan of deities that live out in the planes. And I love that big chess game throughout the multiverse. And so to me, that's where I begin. And why does magic work the way it does? And I love worlds that have limitations. That's another reason that I, didn't do certain things in the game. Don't allow certain races to be prolific and rare. Aasimar is not you won't find too many Aasimars in this quote unquote world, but not from my perspective.
Right. So they're not mutually exclusive.
No, they're not, but they are approaches. I think a lot of people, though, especially when I read different articles, like in those couple that we on Scrib the Bard and Noble Crumpet, I think DMs have proclivities to start with one. I don't know if you can even, I don't know how you could do, well, I do know how you could do it. I've done it. You can do a top down and all the way down to an adventure. That's how I began. The Seven Spheres was from a massive top down approach. If you're DMing, do you have a preference? If you're going to say, okay, Joe's going to run a campaign, would you, in your blank slate, would you begin top down or would you begin bottom up? Would you say, hey, let's play as quick as possible, scribble down a couple of notes on a little town, a little area to begin a base place? Let's go.
If I have to prep with short warning, I'll do bottom up. If I have some time, I'll probably start with a concept and then work out just a few, not very many, just a few details of that concept, and then go back down to bottom up, and maybe you could weave in parts of your overarching concept, perhaps in your encounter tables. There might be some NPCs that you meet, but don't necessarily have a lot of dealings with, so that you've met somebody from one of these factions or two, probably just one. And then later on you find out, or maybe they turn out to be bad guys and you have to do something. So, or they might be a good guy. Who knows? It depends on what faction you sprinkle in there. So I
love the idea of setting players up with meeting a powerful bad guy who's on the road heading somewhere, but he treats them well when they meet him. And then they can meet him again. And when he goes, hey, because you first meet him, your first, second level, he's like, you're a bunch of punks. I'm not going to waste my time. Have a good day. How's it going? Yeah. And then like, oh, these guys might have potential. Be friendly. Hey, my name is so-and-so. If you ever get to this city, look me up.
Yeah.
Don't know that it's actually a sister of the web. He's part of the sister, or she's a sister of the web. And she's like setting them up to pull her into her games.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think with top down and bottom up, I mean, those are the classic, descriptions. That's mostly what I have to say. I am intrigued, though. The second article mentioned some other types. They're outside in and inside out. I don't see much difference. I don't know if you did.
No, I think it's semantic.
But I thought the others had some interesting approaches. And so you ready to take a look at those real quick before we move on to the next topic?
Yes.
Okay. So one called Reactive. This is a method of world building. I'm kind of looking at the site right now. When you create a world around the players and their characters, you literally sit down in a session 0. I know you love that, and figure out what everyone wants to play. You ask them lots of questions. You create your setting about the stories of the players. It requires a lot of imagination, and you kind of have to accept that the story is about the players fully. So if I say, hey Joe, you're playing Dwarven Wizard. How did you come about with magic? And you're like, oh, when I was trained, all Dwarven Wizards had to spend a week down in this dark cavern where there was these different sorts of fungi and stuff and mushrooms, and whichever one you chose to eat affected what school of magic you became most attuned to. So you're building all this up, and even if I as a DM is not totally loving it, I should be like, well, react, let that be a thing. So yeah, you're right, it definitely helps. Your guy leans into that sort of magic, so I think that sort of play has got some legs to it.
Sure.
If you got a creative group.
Well, the thing is you don't have to be just like the other two, the top down, bottom up. It doesn't have to be exclusive. Mm-hmm. So this is a tool in your arsenal. So you can use it when you're stuck. You can just, or maybe you're tired, or you don't want to be burdened by all of the detail. So you reach out to the players. Not all of them are necessarily going to give you anything, which is also fine.
Yep.
And so you can do some of your own. You can reach out to the players, do that reactionary thing as one of your tools. It doesn't have to be the only thing you do.
Right. Maybe Jenny and Jeff have they're feeling it that day. They both got big ideas, and I hear what they have to say, and it really rolls. I asked Joe, and you're like, I'm not really sure. My wizard was studied somewhere. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Your guy's you're not even, she barely got a name for him. That's cool. Let Joe do his thing. And Jeff's like, look, my fighter, he didn't go, he trained in the wild. He learned on his own. He's a real raw fighter. His technique is poor, but because he's so strong and dexterous, he was able to kick the crap out of things. And he has this cool thing about how his character built up. I met this guy in the woods who trained me how to fight like a barbarian, and or he didn't train me, but I just realized we had things in common, and I watched him and learned for a little while. Then I went off on my own. So I mean, you run with what you got. And I think you're right. I think it doesn't have to be exclusive.
Right. But you have to be careful.
Exclusive. Yep.
You have to be careful, because if you ask, you really have to be ready to use what they give you.
You do.
Because if you ask and you say, yeah, that doesn't sound very good.
Yeah. And I don't mind if a player says we're doing something and they're like, hey, I want to use my magic, or I want to use my magic, my prestidigitation, to make it look like I'm covered in blood, even though that's not really something that the spell can do. And if it's a DM, I'm like, no. I mean, they're asking to kind of go outside of the rules there, and they're not really it's not them inputting. They're inputting the world, but they're trying to make a spell do something it shouldn't. And if I say, okay, that's great. But if I say no, I don't feel bad. But if Jenny says, hey, I want my half-orc fighter, I want her to be, what was the one she had? She loved her.
Lavender.
Lavender was awesome, yeah. And I want Lavender to be very much into makeup. She's as pretty as she can be for a half-orc. She loves to talk and schmooze men, but she's totally buff. And so she's got a reputation for being very flirtatious in the town. So people know her. No, your charisma is only 12. Nah, I can't do that. She's wants to build part of her character into this world, and you just got to say, okay, yeah. So Lavender, a lot of people know her. She's kind of flirty, and in this town, people know Lavender, and for a half-orc, she's pretty attractive. Maybe she's just attractive. I don't know. Maybe she doesn't have a tusk. I don't know about me, but I wouldn't be that attracted to tusk. But in a fantasy world, I'm sure there are plenty of people that are attracted to half-orcs. Especially if they're an orc or a half-orc themselves.
It would. In our time, it would be a fetish.
Probably, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It would be.
But yeah,
you have to respect it as a DM. Be ready to respect it. Do you think there would be a time though where you could put the brakes on an idea?
Well, you could say, I look. You want my input? Yes, I am a human, but I only look human. I'm actually an android.
Right.
So when I get stabbed, my blood is black and oily. However, I still get healed by heal spells.
Right.
So, sometimes someone might have, and that might work in some campaigns. But if you have a campaign that does not include whatever it would need to have an android, even a unique creature on your
Mhm.
planet, and people, we both met people who would probably come up with something that out off the wall.
Vanish. Yeah.
But so you'd have to be, one thing you'd have to do is know your players.
Yeah.
Before, but if you're fine with Gonzo,
Yep.
you can get any group of 4, 5, 6 people together and just get their input and just run with it.
Or you could always say, I would be inclined to say, what if you think that?
Yeah.
I mean, what if you're convinced of that and no
Right.
one can tell you otherwise?
Right.
That's a delusion you have. And so when they see blood red, you see black blood. You're like, oh, it'll be okay. I can't really die. Because your character can't, it's so dangerous out there. They had to literally in their mind say, I can't die. I'm special.
Right.
So that I could probably get into, but you're right. Depending on the world, you have to be pretty gonzo to think, yeah, that sounds good. You're an android.
Right.
I didn't get the Mad Libs one. What did you think of that? Are you happen to be looking at the page too or not?
Is that the
That's the
Noble
second.
Crumpled?
Yeah, the Noble Crumpet. And he's like, you create a list of concepts and fill them out systematically. Have an idea in mind. This is my go-to for organizing thoughts.
I thought I'd looked at all these, but it looks like oh yeah. This
That
was
didn't
one.
seem-
This was
Oh.
one that I spaced on reading this one.
It's okay because it says despite the name, this type of world creation is highly organized. So he's got an example of a Mad Lib city name, location, biome, climate, area size, economy, factions, religions, military, government, magic. And it's just a list of this like kind of bullet points with topics. I don't know. I don't even know how this helps you very much other than a template. And then I agree with him. It would make things could easily become stale and cookie cutter. I don't know what he's trying to do.
I would say that's probably not something many people do.
Yeah.
Just looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm going to fill out a form.
Yeah. I thought his randomization approach was kind of fun. Patrick and I did this when we were toying with the world for our Savage Worlds fantasy game we're going to do at Cabin Con. And I don't want to say that's gone, but we haven't really talked about it since we kind of rolled the dice. But there's a dice generating idea that he links to. Basically, you just choose aspects of your setting at random and make up different combinations. He says he does it when he gets stuck on there. So
I guarantee you somebody has a random campaign generator out there.
Probably does.
And I'll tell you where what would be good, a good thing is if you are stuck.
Mm-hmm.
You go and you go get a couple, 2, 3 random campaigns, and you could probably piece together something good out of that. It at least would be a good jumping point. So you don't have to start from scratch, nothing. You never do. You never do.
Things that this hobby's 40, 50 years old. So, and people have been voracious about putting stuff on the internet. So, I kind of think, if you're starting from scratch, just do it because you want to. You don't do it because you have to. I mean, there's definitely the option of just buying a campaign setting and play Forgotten Realms.
Right.
And I would happily play Forgotten Realms. As a DM, I'd rather not run it, not because I don't like it, but if the players are like, we love the Forgotten Realms, could we please play that? I would do it for them. I don't find it that bad of a setting to play in. His last one, I don't get. I think he uses some high and mighty terms that I don't totally. I'm not sure if he understands. It says 3-beat premise. This method is where you mash 2 existing relatable concepts together and create a new one. I didn't look up the phrase 3-beat premise, but that doesn't sound like something I would think it was. It says you would likely work with a top-down design. The 3-beat premise is essentially X meets Y. His example is Kingdom Hearts is Disney meets Final Fantasy.
It sounds like 2, not 3.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I thought it was kind of neat though when you look at his list there. He has setting, roll a D10. So if you roll a D10, let me grab a D10. If you roll a D10, as I drop my dice here, you could, so I rolled a 2, post-apocalyptic setting, hot or cold desert, and then mix that with far-reaching empire. So you try to mesh that to create your setting. I rolled a 9. Or if I tried another one, 1 would be a Wild Western setting with mix that with prehistoric jungle. So, and that could even be fantasy where it's just all the rules are out. It's wild and crazy and it's a jungle world. And he goes further out there with themes. You can do different themes. I think that's a fun thing to do if you feel like I want to do a new campaign setting, but I'm having a hard idea. I have nothing that's drawing me one particular way or the other. And you like the idea of being whimsical with the dice. I don't think that's not a problem. That's fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
A lot of this, the random things, this being one variation on random,
sure,
are good for when you're stuck.
Yep, I agree.
You're stuck for either you're tired, you just can't think of something, writer's block, or you're crunched for time, and I got to throw down in 10 minutes. Okay,
this is what Cabin Con's in 2 weeks. I told the guys I'd have a setting that'd be a little bit different, so I'm going to go random on it.
Yeah.
Those
are fine. It's a good starting point, and then you can fold in the other techniques along with it later on once you get your ball rolling.
Yeah, I think really that the thing that works best, and there's been some mentionings of it, but you've said it best. I think you got to mix some of this stuff together. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea in the Mudsword if I were to have a session and try to be a little reactive, let players say some things, have some narrative control, and see where it goes, and see if it inspires us to build a world with something really cool like that. Because sometimes you get great nuggets from players.
Yeah.
Often you do, actually. I do. All right. Any more comments about how to design campaigns or worlds?
I don't think so. I think we have successfully navigated that.
Yep. Everybody, new DMs, your problems have been solved. You're welcome.
Yes. Have a toolkit. Probably your best bet instead of just going with one direction.
Right.
All right. So let's see. We're doing a time check because we were going to do a part 2 if we had time. It is 9:15.
We've been rolling. You want to hold off?
I think we can do this quick.
Yeah, I'm feeling like this one is not going to be a long one, less than the campaign one for sure, and the least of the 3, right? This is the 3rd in the series, the second part.
Yeah. So
inspirational
music. So I didn't just pick out individual songs.
Me neither.
And honestly, I don't think for me that music is directly inspirational. And maybe I'm just being pedantic. I think they are more things that put you in the right mood or mind or mindset, frame of mind. Less hey, this and now it's possible that you can have a song that makes you think of a campaign world or a character you want to play, things like that. But for me, music is more of a mindset. So for me, and in no particular order, Conan the Barbarian soundtrack.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Most of it's going to be from back in the day, I think, because that's when I first started playing. So it's a nostalgia factor, and it puts me in a particular frame of mind. So Conan the Barbarian soundtrack is awesome, and there's a lot of soundtracks here. So Conan the Barbarian, Lord of the Rings, a lot of Star Trek soundtracks are good. Star Wars, Aliens, especially. I know when we play, hasn't been that much lately, but since we saw Aliens and up to the recent past, Aliens quotes are just all over the place.
Yeah, dude.
Very quotable show, but as far as soundtrack, it's great. Now, as far as other things, classical music is good too. For me, the one singular song. Actually, there's two, kind of. Led Zeppelin's "Immigrant Song."
Yeah,
that's nice and inspirational or mood setting. And Rush has one, 2112.
Oh, okay.
And actually Rush in general, but 2112 in particular, it's an album, but I think it's one of their either an album with only 2 or 3 songs or one long track. I think that it's this one, but I can't remember for sure. But
Okay.
basically 2112 is a dystopian future song.
Okay.
So it's slightly fantasy-like, I guess. So it's a good mood song.
And there's a Zeppelin song that talks about Moria, isn't there? It's got a little Hobbit action going on in it.
Yeah, there's
They have some references
yes,
about that periodically. Yeah.
Tolkien references. Yeah,
Yeah.
because the guitar player
Oh, is he a big
was
Tolkien
a
dude?
Tolkien. At least he read it once, at least.
Right. Read it once. Yeah.
Not sure how big of a fan he was, but at least he read it and they made a song.
Yeah.
There is Fleetwood Mac for some reason, because it's from back in the day, it kind of does that for me, even though there's not any real connectivity lyric wise.
Right.
And then there's one more recent band that it's same thing with Fleetwood Mac. It's not a particular thing, but it's they put me in a certain mind frame. Frame of mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's a band that I've told you about called Big Big Train.
Oh, okay.
They're a UK band. So if John Allen Large is listening, hopefully he's heard of them. If not, go find them out. If you like progressive rock, if that's not something that you're into, then you won't like them. But they're a progressive rock band, and their music has a lot of roots to it with respect to British culture.
Oh, okay.
So considering fantasy tropes are kind of tied to
Brits,
medieval Europe, medieval Britain, it kind of, there's kind of a weird tie-in.
There is.
So that's mine.
Okay.
That was 10.
Yep, we have some crossovers. Yeah, music was harder for me too, and I'm with you. A lot of this is music, and my interpretation was somewhat like yours. Inspiration. I mean, it's not that I see games, but there are definitely some music soundtracks and such and CDs that I play while I'm working on a game, and I choose them. The first ones might surprise you is Disturbed. It's not just because I like them. I like the metal. I like the hard driving sound. It makes me think violently. Which is actually good for a DM, you know. I don't know what it is. I like to have it in the background. Queensryche, more because they tend to have stories in a lot of their, especially Operation Mindcrime. I love that album. Led Zeppelin, of course, and that's only in the recent past. I think most of their music's very good to have in the background. And this is weird. The Cranberries. There's something about their music. I think it's that lady's, I don't know if it's lilting. Her voice is just so unique. And then classical. I like classical too. LOTR soundtracks. I have a couple versions of the soundtracks. Some I like better than others. Rolling Stones greatest hits. Some of this is just stuff I like to have in the back. Hair metal music from the 80s. Some pop music from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And Celtic music. Some traditional Celtic, Irish, or, you know, I think that's Irish, right? I don't remember. Scottish. Robert Walker will be mad at me here if he hears
over
this.
there somewhere.
But yeah, one of those crazy British islands. But so that's the sort of stuff that just I kind of like to have in the background when I'm prepping. I like music when I'm prepping. Speaking of that, we said it really doesn't. Inspiration was close, but do you like music to be played during the game?
It wouldn't bother me. I don't have a preference, but it wouldn't bother me.
A friend of ours once ran a Star Wars game, and he had this main Star Wars movie soundtrack going on, and at multiple times it felt perfectly appropriate, but he had it on loop. Mm-hmm. So it was probably kind of lucky. I know our friend Patrick's talked about where he uses music to set the mood. It seems like it's a little more fiddling than I would like to do. If I had a system set up real quick where I could, you know, reach over and just tap something and play, have my songs all laid out, that'd be great. But I'm not inclined to do that for certain moments. Time for a battle or time for.
There is an app. There is an application. I don't know if it's if it's a desktop or phone or both. Probably both.
Yeah.
Sirenscape.
Oh, okay. Oh, they used to sell their music. Is it something free?
Oh, I don't think so. There might be some free stuff on it.
They did. They did a lot of a few years back at Gen Con, and I think they still do it. They made certain musics for Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. So how does music compare to books and movies that we've talked about for inspiration?
Well, like I said, it's more for mood
Yeah.
for me. It's
Yeah.
more for mood, background, puts you in a good mindset. It gets, I think, especially classical music, it can get you out of the present time.
Yep.
So that it's easier for you to use your imagination. I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I do think books and movies inspire me more for plots and adventure ideas, but I do think music is really something. Like I said, when I prep, I have it on all the time. I don't prep in silence ever. I have music, and those are some of my top ones.
Well, if I'm actually writing,
Mm-hmm.
It would have to be instrumental.
Oh, okay. Because you get sidetracked by the sound.
Well, by lyrics. So I suppose if I had it on low enough and I didn't really hear the lyrics or I could think over them, that's one thing. But when there's lyrics, I want to sing along or something like that.
And sometimes I do, but
nobody wants to hear that.
But I bet she comes in and has a little thing. So, all right, cool. All right, I think that's all I got to say about music.
Yeah.
All right. So move along.
Moving along, like it, love it, or leave it.
I guess I'll go first this time, right?
Okay, that's fine.
Yep. All right. So Joseph, undead and D&D.
Yes.
Yes,
they
please.
exist.
Okay.
They are very appropriate. I love them in D&D.
Okay.
Love them as enemies. I want to go them and smash them.
Right.
They're great.
Yeah.
Smash them in the smithereens.
Right.
Because apparently smash is a synonym for sex now. Who knew?
Oh crap.
One of the multitude, I suppose.
Oh, lovely. Okay. Another word that I probably should learn, but oh well. Favorite fruit and why?
So
I love undead. Yeah.
To choose from. I guess it would have to be. It's hard. There's so many good ones. I want to say banana.
Oh, okay.
If it's appropriately ripe, because
what does that mean? What does that mean for you? Appropriately ripe?
Just off a green. So it's firm, but there's no brown spots. It's not all mushy and
but
mealy.
No green either.
Maybe just a tiny bit.
I don't like mine completely green, but I like them about a third to a half green.
Yeah.
I like my bananas not to snap, but to have a little bit of a. Got to work at them.
They have to be firm, but I think if it was half green, I probably wouldn't like it. There's the greener they get, they have a different flavor.
Yes, they do.
Once they're no longer green at all, there's a different flavor. Plus, they're like baby food. If you let them go.
Yeah. I'm with you though. I like them green because I think they tend to be a little nicer to eat in general. Greener, not green. I don't want them fully green. Yeah.
They're easier to eat because you just peel it and eat it.
Yeah. So is banana your favorite because of the ease of eating?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
I guess apples are easier because you just eat them. You just throw away the core. But oranges, while if you can get a good orange from the store, good luck. You have to peel them, and that's a chore, or it can be. Or not a huge one, but it's
an annoyance.
Yeah, it's an annoyance. And a lot of the other ones are like,
and they're messy.
I love mangoes. I love the flavor of the mangoes, but they're a completely huge mess.
It's funny because Colin Cowherd, a sports guy I used to listen to a lot, he won't eat oranges. He says, I love orange juice, love the flavor, too much work. I don't mess with things, take too much effort. That was funny. Okay. Rules light games.
Depends on how light. Yeah. But I like them. They're good. They're definitely good for one shots.
Yeah. So you kind of like them in a kind of an area then, one shots. Yeah. Okay.
One shots, short campaigns maybe, but it depends on how light you're talking.
Oh, okay. So something like, do you consider Savage Worlds light? I kind of don't.
Well, if you're just talking about just Savage Worlds,
I mean, yeah, pick your favorite.
uh,
Oh, I see. The core rules are simple, but I don't think they're necessarily light. There's some moving parts and connectivity there.
yeah, but it's a very small rule set.
Yeah.
Uh,
What's simpler? I haven't really played Fate, but it looks fairly simple. Played Fate one. Sorry. What would we consider rules light then? If you might want to count Savage Worlds as rules light. What about Aliens RPG?
Yeah, that was fun.
That was rules light.
Yeah, that was
good one shot though. I'm not sure I'd do a campaign. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
You got some for me?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Browsing the interwebs.
So I'm bored to start looking for random crap. Not so much.
Just the process.
Right. The process is fine. It's not too hard. I've gotten better at finding stuff. I don't mind it. I do like it if I'm looking for something specific. I like a category. If I'm like, ooh, DM advice. And now when I'm prepping for the outline, I browse the internet. I would say sometimes I find it tedious and just annoying, but I do find myself doing it more than I would like. I should spend more time reading and relaxing and not so much internet browsing. But
Gotcha.
Like it. Let's say like it.
Cigars.
Pass. Hard pass. Leave it.
Yes.
Yep.
I like the way they smell sometimes.
At a distance, they're not bad.
Yeah.
Some
they can be pretty intense.
Yeah. Some of our boys back at home, Joe, they're kind of into sharing cigars, having a cigar every now and again. No way.
Hard liquor.
Pass. Hurts my tummy.
Oh,
I got a weak tummy. And what I mean by that, I don't really have a very tough one. But for some reason, if I drink like whiskey, boy, it just like boom hits my stomach. And I'm not interested in getting drunk at all. But even with hard liquor, I just would rather not. If it's hidden inside something, that if you got a lot of flavors, like I know when I was young in college, first time I ever, got drunk was on Long Island iced teas. And
They're
that's
tasty.
a mixture. Yeah, but it's a mixture of several pretty hard liquors, and I drank like 4 of them. And my friends were like, dude, you said you never drank before. I'm like, yeah, but I drink a lot of crap. This tastes like lemony tea. It's really even better than that. And they're like, you're going to be so blessed. I'm like, I'll be fine. And I get up out of the chair and I go to the bathroom. I literally, like in the movies, I missed the door handle. So as soon as I stood up, I was like, whoa. But yeah, I was like, oh, no, of course I got sick. That was horrible how bad I got sick.
Yeah.
But yeah, hard liquor, I would say a hard pass.
All righty.
Yep. All right.
And that's that.
Yeah, it is. That's it.
So moving along to playing in the mud. And this is going to be meaty mud.
Meaty mud. So we played last Friday, my first draft of the rules. Generally speaking, had a lot of good suggestions from the players. What did you think of the first? And there's just a few pages. So we had fighter, magic user, thief, cleric. We had dwarf, elf, human, halfling. And it was really bare bones because, it's all I could write, like 5 or 6 pages. We played a full game with those rules, full session, had a good time, leveled up because I want to keep leveling so we can test the system. Came back with a lot of good advice. What did you think of it overall?
Oh, it was fun. I had a lot of fun.
Not just the game, but what about the rules? Again,
the rules,
be brutally honest, I'm fine with it.
So we were using the Rules Cyclopedia as an adjunct to your sheets, your printout, and that helped a lot. But especially for spells and gear and stuff.
Yep.
For the classes, I think it was a great first run. Great. But it's like everything. The first.
Oh, it's going to need a lot of revisions and additions.
Got some revisions. I think mainly in the rogue, thief, cleric.
Yeah, Patrick, really good suggestions with the rogue, thief, and the cleric. You think needs more what? You think I need to go more on the?
Well, I'm not sure if the cleric. I'm not sure if the cleric needs anything, but if it's going to be what you're envisioning it being more of a paladin than it is the traditional cleric, then it's going to definitely need some work.
Okay.
because and so we've only had 2 levels or one. We only played 1 level.
One level, first level. That was it. Yeah.
So I think we should play through a few levels before we give any more real concrete stuff. I think that I had my primary input was with the races.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stat mods in particular.
Yeah, I don't. After having played 3rd edition up to now, I'm not a fan of the various races getting stat modifiers.
Right.
I'm more in the camp of min maxes like they had in the old days. Definitely maxes, maybe not necessarily minimums, unless they're like bare minimums, like 5 or whatever.
Right.
Depending on
because and I was on purpose. One thing people complained about was I did a bonus of +1 to a stat for each non-human race. They had their own thing, and a -2 to a stat. And so, of course, people were like, and a lot of our players coming from a 3-point whatever version or 5th edition were like, oh, that's so harsh. But honestly, I did it because I wanted the humans to stand out, because that's kind of my theme right now. It doesn't stay that way, but Mudswords in my mind is going to be kind of human centric.
Right.
It doesn't mean there will be other races, but I don't think that's the way to go. Well, the dwarf had a +1 to con and a -2 to, was it Dex?
I think it was wisdom, was it? Or charisma?
I don't know, one of them. I know that Jeff played the dwarf and he had a really stinky stat for that. Yeah. The elf had a +1 to intelligence and a -2 to con. I'm with you. I think we're going to change it to maximum. So like right now I'm leaning toward an elf having a max of 16 con. That's the highest their con can go.
Right.
I'm having a dwarf, a max of, what did I say? What was their penalty on?
I can't remember.
Dexterity, whatever it was, max dex 14 or 16. I might make it 14. I don't know. Maybe lower. I may let them have, and to balance that out, I'm considering, too much. Think of this. What do you think of them being allowed to go above 18 on their good stat? Max of strength is 19. But how would I get that with 46 drop low?
I would say no.
Stay away from that. Okay, sounds good.
I wouldn't worry too much about balance.
Yes.
Initially. I think a better thing is just, what do you think conceptually they would do?
Which was a problem. Go ahead. Which was a problem for the rogue.
Yeah.
In my mind, I don't know what he was.
And then go from there. So you say, this is what they do.
Yeah.
Put some ideas down on what that means game wise, and then go from there and modify.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have modifiers. I understand. The only way I would have modifiers is if it was definitely going to stay very low level.
Okay. Oh, why is that?
Because if you have mins and maxes, or maxes for sure, those may only play out in the long game, because we're rolling, because we rolled. We didn't have templated stats. We rolled.
Right. Yeah.
So you're going to have low stats on average compared to other iterations of the game. On average, going after making multiple characters.
Yeah, we did 46. Drop the lowest. Put them in any order you wish.
Right. So it's going to be a little bit better than 3d6 in order, which is the original version of the game. And then you had to just play. You had to pick something that fit your stats instead of picking something you want to play in advance and then rolling your stats and going with that. But
at least 46 gives you a chance of doing that.
Right.
I want to play a wizard because I can move my best stat to intelligence.
Right. So there are things about the demi-humans that in the low game, in the first and third level, either you just accept that they're more powerful because they have abilities that the humans don't, or you pare back some, maybe pad the human a little bit to give them something that's equivalent, and then they go forward that way. And if you do that, I think that you eliminate stat benefits, and then the humans don't get any either.
Right.
And I think level, you have maximums, and then you have class maximums, and then in the long game, that's where you're going to see the more differences between the races, especially if the class maximums are low.
Yeah. Like it wasn't like, there used to be a halfling could be a 4th level fighter.
Right.
That was it. 4th. So yeah, which I know you probably don't disagree with.
Right. So, and my thinking on this isn't complete. So it might take some tinkering around and looking at things to arrive at something that conceptually we'll agree on and that meets the whole. We have to either agree to set it out that at low level, your demi-humans might seem a little more powerful than the humans, but later on in the game, either it balances out or maybe the humans stand out in the later part of the game.
They might surpass them at the high end.
Or we balance them out so that they are all roughly equivalent throughout the game.
And I don't really want to do that. I think I'm leaning toward not doing that.
Okay.
I'm just leaning toward.
Yeah.
Now, Patrick had a comment on the rogues. He played a rogue. He felt a little bit useless with my sneak attack damage being a D6. And we talked about backstab. And we brought up the idea of momentum from 13th Age. Those that don't know that, momentum is 13th Age. When a rogue hits, they gain momentum. Then they can spend that momentum to do cool things, like maybe, do bonus damage on a flying dagger attack. This is 13th Age. It's a little more narrative game. Or lets you avoid an attack. Or even in 13th Age, you can even teleport across the battlefield. So that's a little too crazy for me. I want to call it something like gaining the edge. And so I like the idea, Patrick mentioned momentum, is to let the thief, when he hits, gain the edge. And I love the idea of maybe when he has edge, he can, and he keeps it in 13th Age, the thief keeps momentum until he misses or gets hit. Is that what it is? If he makes a strike and misses, or
I think either one
will take it away. If we kept that as a theme, or if we said only if he gets hit, you could do, we could say either one. And then you could do things like maybe momentum, gaining the edge could let you improve your armor class for a round, +1 or +2. It could do something like negate a critical, turn a critical into a normal strike. Oh, we were doing crits too, of max damage on the die and then roll another die. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, because sometimes if you just roll 2 die, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, that way you're guaranteed some pretty decent damage.
Right.
So I think that idea of momentum, or what I might call gaining the edge, is something a thief or rogue could use. I got thinking today, I kind of want the rogue to be that dangerous guy in combat that has to kind of set up his backstab or set up his sneakiness. And I like that idea because I really didn't have my mind wrapped around what the rogue was supposed to do, because I kind of don't like the idea of the rogue being just a pickpocket, open locks, the 47 percentile things that he does in first edition. I don't know. It just seems, as I've talked about before, how it becomes useless anyway later on. So, but what did you think about that idea of momentum? Did you think that's a decent way to go?
I'm not sure. I'm not totally sold on it, but
Well,
it's something to play with. It's something to play with for a while.
Because it's a little new schooly, right? A little new schooly.
I think if it was up to me, I think I would find a good way to emulate the old thief without doing it exactly that way.
Okay.
So, which is the way you were approaching it.
Yeah.
I think because you had thief skills,
right?
Broadly
package skills. Yeah, 2 or 3 packages.
And and I think this is one of the complaints I have about first edition, second edition, and even old Beckman is a thief starts out with very low chance of doing their thing.
Right.
The only thing that their only thing they're decent at is climbing walls.
Yep.
That's it. They can't really even be a scout because they're 15% chance maybe at first level. And so I get not everybody's good at their thing, but even a fighter at attacking, even if you or anybody, if you don't have a bonus to hit, you have a 50-50 chance of hitting somebody without any armor on.
Right.
So that's better than, if you have a stupid lock that's not really even well made, and it's still only, you only have a 5% chance of opening it.
It's kind of waste of time.
And so you could have classes of difficulty for different types of locks, and you can have 2 or 3. You don't need to have 50 million.
Right.
You could do opposed checks for sneaking, and the same kind of thing with traps, so kind of a graduated thing, 2 or 3 different types. You don't need a bunch. And instead of having the tiny chances at first level, and maybe you could pick one to be good at. You don't necessarily have to be, you don't have to be that good, but
right,
2 out of 6, 3 out of 6 is better than 10%.
I think the skill system I set up allows you to be decent at a few of those things.
Without
it's hard
having,
to be. Yeah. I mean, you kind of pick. I broke the thief skills up into 2 or 3 skill sets, and you had to pick 1 or 2, maybe if you wanted to put some ranks into it. I don't want to go into detail. I mean,
right.
I was fairly happy with the way the skill system seemed to work, but that's only one playthrough. What did you think?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I prefer not having a bunch of hard-coded skills on your sheet. I prefer having a background, and and you can pick one. And if we ever have a published game set, then we could have a few examples. But you pick a background, and you and the DM just figure out what that means as far as when you get to go do something. Do you have an advantage, as in a bonus or minus, or bonus to your roll, on a particular activity? And that's not.
Does it fit your background?
Does it fit your background? You get a little bonus. If it doesn't, just straight roll.
It's a modification of clearly a 13th age thing we've taken, and that I think is good. It's a pretty heavy modification in 13th age.
And I prefer it to what a lot of old school folks do is you take whatever you're going to do, roll under your stat that I've decided applies in this situation.
That just seems too good, generally speaking.
Right. And I think that even with just moderate stats, I mean, does that mean you can do it doesn't mean you can do when you're trying to figure out what you know, let's say. Just because you have a decent intelligence doesn't mean you know everything.
Right. You're 18 intelligence, first level wizard. Dude, you're still first level. You're barely out of school. No, you don't know Asmodeus' true name.
Right.
You just don't. And you don't get to roll 18 under and make it. That's crazy.
And sure, the DM can say, well, that's pretty specific knowledge. You don't really get a roll or whatever. But if you're overarching concept, because the old school, you don't have skills. So DMs have had to just figure out what you can do. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. I don't particularly like the roll under your stat thing, because I don't think it makes everybody an everyman.
I was intrigued by it initially, but once I saw it in play again, I remember not liking it much near the end of first and second edition anyway. And so, I think I'm back there. What did you think of the saving throw? We had a saving throw like the white box, like Savage Swords and Wizardry. Just a saving throw. I think
it needs a little tinkering. I don't mind having a saving throw, but I don't necessarily need all your stats to modify saving throws. But it doesn't seem very intuitive that if I'm a dexterous person, that if I'm trying to dodge something, I don't get that consideration.
The ability mod?
Right.
Well, yeah, and I just worry because I'm kind of I took Beckme, Rules Cyclopedia, and I looked at the wizard and said his average saving throw was about a 16. And so I made it 17 minus this modifier.
Yeah.
I have a little.
I don't mind being hard.
Yeah, hard initially, and it's going to drop down to where it's eventually going to be pretty good. And I used a little mathematical formula on each one of the 4 classes. You'll eventually every class will be pretty close to its average saving throw according to the saving throw tables in Rules Cyclopedia.
Right.
And then I modify it based upon your race. You may get a modification to a type of saving throw. I did try to bring in 3rd edition reflex, will, and fortitude, and I didn't fully flesh it out. I used some different words which confuse people, and I'm going to fix that as categories of saves where maybe your halfling gets a bonus on all agility, that reflex type saving throws, and that could jump into a bunch of different categories. But I think that needs some work. I think you're right. The question is, what you're saying is, shouldn't a really good ability score affect that saving throw? Is that your idea?
Now, it might be just my perception that your ability score should matter some.
Mhm.
I don't think that they should matter ultimately in all things, but they should
Right.
matter. I mean, saving throws to me are are a perfect place for stats to matter. You don't have to have stats do everything to your class abilities. I think that was way overdone.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
I can do this intelligence times per day, and my constitution affects the saving throw that I impose on somebody or whatever.
Yeah.
They really they wove stats into every single thing. I don't think you need to do that, but I think saving throws is, if you're going to do anything with stats,
Yeah.
apart from combat, strength to hit and damage, that kind of thing, saves are because you have it on your armor class.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's defense. So
that's kind
it
of
makes
defense.
yeah. And
So
saving throws are defensive.
I'm not fully sure if I'm there yet. I think at one iteration we'll absolutely do it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I want to change that yet, but it's definitely on the table.
Right.
What about hit points? How did they feel? What do they feel like the way I did hit points? Max hit points at first level?
I think they were pretty spot on good.
Okay. You liked them. Not too much, not too little.
Yeah.
Okay. This came up. One of our players asked him, he was, can I have a battle axe? Can I have a mace that does the same damage as a battle axe? That's very 13th age.
Right.
I think I lean toward, and do you want to have flexible weapons, descriptive weapons, where it's just your character does this kind of damage with a weapon, or do you, like that's 13th age where
I'd rather just have hard set weapons, because if you don't, you can have someone say, well, I want my light crossbow to do two-handed sword damage.
Yeah. Because I'm super awesome at it.
Just because that's what I think it should be.
But if we were to bring in fighter mastery rules, we could have it do stuff like that.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Right. So if you master a weapon.
Yep.
And if we're going to do that, if we do that weapon mastery, we should have some version of finding a mentor to teach you instead of you just getting it.
And I'm okay with that being to try to role play it some, but I also don't mind if it's got just basically a little role play and a gold piece cost to pay for that master. Or I don't know. I don't care. I don't, because I kind of want it a little gritty, I guess.
Well, mainly because depends on how big we make the bet. If you go with the full blown benefits, some of them are good and some of them are not so good. Like being a mastering the staff is not as satisfying as mastering, say, a great or even just a normal sword or a two-handed sword, because the damage difference can be pretty big with those, but it's very small with the staff. So and that's fine too. I'm okay with not all weapons being as good as other weapons. Me too.
Do you think that was a weird comment? In Rules Cyclopedia, they have what's called listed a normal sword.
Right.
They don't have the long sword in there, which I found because of my recent experiences since 1E for sure. It's been long sword, right?
Right.
And now it's the normal sword. I have a normal sword, does D8 damage. That's what it says in the book. That was kind of fun.
I don't know. I wonder if that comes from wargaming or if, and I know that like Shadiversity, a YouTube channel, he's gone over swords a lot.
Yeah.
And he's got some different names for them. He doesn't use normal sword, but he has different, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but
yeah, Jeff mentioned
sword,
that.
There's another kind of sword.
Yeah.
And he even says that long swords are two-handed weapons. You can use them as one-handed. It's kind of like the bastard sword thing, one-handed or two-handed. But long swords are definitely, especially with how the pommel is designed, because it's designed to put two hands on with a long sword. So they're designed to be used two-handed. So
even if you watch Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, he's using a longsword. You can see he's got a lot of extra space below the bottom of his hand. I'm starting to dig Shadiversity. You'll be glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I think I'm starting to appreciate him. At first I didn't. I found him a little little too cocky for my taste, but I think
He's a
it's
young
just,
guy.
and he kind of knows what he's talking about. So I'm going to give him that. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
He's had, apparently he's got some level of training in martial arts in something that's called HEMA, which is I can't remember what the H is, but essentially it's European martial arts, which is essentially sword fighting. There might be other weapons, but it's European martial arts. And right.
I got it. All right. Any thoughts on the campaign world? We kind of mentioned tonight some things. Is there part?
Didn't touch it very much.
Huh?
They really didn't touch it very much.
No, not really. I mean, and I think that's okay.
Not the big concepts.
The high levels, no. So I mean, this could. So I think. I mean, do you think? I feel like the campaign world could easily fit any ideas you have into it, right?
Sure.
You see me? I didn't do anything that said, "Oh man, you just crapped on this possibility."
No. They could easily, because it's they're both points of light.
Mm-hmm.
We could easily weave things in there together.
I mean, I would like to do that. Would you like to weave our?
Yeah, that sounds good.
I don't have as much on the setting as I know you kind of did, so I'm happy to lean on that. In the end, though, and I feel like we got to eventually we got to come up to a feel. We're not fully old school players.
No,
right?
I've got some points I want to bring out too.
Bring it up. Sure.
Yes. So I think it's essential if we're going to have some sort of old school mentality.
Yeah.
It's going to mean that the game has to be difficult.
Yes.
Not necessarily comprehending the rules, but success is got to be, it can't be easy. So, and the way it was emulated at the table on Saturday was saving throws were very hard to do.
Yep.
The base number, the lowest base number we had was 16.
Yeah.
Now I had, I don't know if everybody had, but there were some save modifiers depending on class and race. So, but it didn't come up very much, being able to get those because they're not universal.
I remember your wife's eyes when I said make a saving throw for her fighter.
16?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard.
It's been a while since she's played first edition.
Not right. And then starting hit points. I mean, it's not fully old school where some folks would say it's fine to roll with 1 hit point.
I am not interested in that. Yeah.
But my character only had 7.
Yep. And you had 1 spell. And guess what? You were completely useful throughout the whole adventure. You knew stuff. You contributed. Sometimes in some fights you held it. That one fight you literally won that one fight with the sleep spell that had you not, I am confident someone would have died in that room.
Yeah, there were a lot
and there were goblins and orcs, like 2 orcs and a bunch of goblins. It was a heck of a fight, but that sleep spell was needed for that scene. And I think we have to I think people are not, I think it's funny watching the group. I don't think a lot of our players, maybe you and me and Philip, and I think Jeff fully embraced it, but I know you, me, and Philip, we lived it, dude.
Yeah.
Fully lived that. And I think Patrick and Jeff did a little, I think your wife did too, but she doesn't remember the details. I mean, to be that shocked at the saving throws. I remember you weren't shocked at all. You're like, yeah, they're going to suck. None of us should have to. I mean, if anybody can roll lower than a 15 to save, you're doing really well.
Yeah.
And so
danger.
I didn't have lots of saving throws for you either because I knew.
Yeah.
It was super hard. And I wanted to see some things, and saving throws weren't one of them. The next adventure might be a more saving throw based game.
Right. So
death.
The early part of the game, success in general should be a hard fought battle.
Agreed.
Maybe later on it should decrease from general to specific. So at the mid levels, you're going to have some easy, you're going to have some hard, and then when you're high level, you might all be hard because you're not going to fight anything easy. You're going to leave that for your retainers to take care of.
Yep.
You're going to deal with the hard stuff, and it's going to be hard.
Yes.
Success should be hard.
You should feel like we used to say that back in the day. I remember even, Jeremy and Ryan and stuff. And I think you even said it, we feel like when you guys would win some really epic sort of encounters, you guys were like whooping it up. You're like, dang, we did that, man. We pulled that crap out of our butts,
right?
And that was really cool. And I'm with you. And I think we just had some players at the table that I don't think fully.
They didn't grasp that. They didn't grasp that.
That's the point.
Different play styles.
Yes.
Not everybody is on board with that.
Yeah, and I think you got to remember that. And I think if you take that away from an old school, I think our game is going to be old school adjacent. I'm not going to say fully old school.
Right.
It might be. I mean, when we get done with it, if we don't go momentum, edge type style with the thief and do some other things, our skill system's a little less old school, but I don't know. It may be fully old school. Right now, I feel like we played enough new school that we have leanings, things we like about newer school gaming that we're probably going to want to implement.
Right. Task resolution at old school was whatever your DM did.
Yes.
Because they didn't have it. Anyway, sleep spell.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, it was.
It was the only spell you had,
mm-hmm.
but it was, like you said, it was key in the one room. I think something that I like is, and it's something that I mentioned, spell descriptions being short and concise rather than the what we have for a lot of spells in modern games, long spell descriptions, too much lore. Some is fine, but they generally have way too much.
And I think there's an advantage to that. You mentioned that the other night. If we let our spells be thin, then in description, basically just basic rules of the spells, then I can add that flavor in the adventure so that the Hobgoblin Warcaster, when he casts sleep, maybe it looks real different.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe things happen. Maybe people like kind of go rigid for a second and then fall back.
Yeah, who knows?
Oh, and you're like, maybe they're paralyzed. No, it's just sleep. But that's how he rolls. His sleep spell is very physical, and it kind of jerks you out of awakeness.
Right.
Knocks you out. That's the better phrase.
So you did that.
Mom said knock you out. Go ahead,
another good thing was we were able to get up and running pretty quick. Nobody had a character when we sat down, and then we all made characters, and it was pretty quick, even with not a very high familiarity with the rules. So once we get to know the rules, it'll be real fast.
Yeah.
Death rule. I liked it, how it played out. I might just pick 3 instead of rolling, and just it'd be 3 all the time, maybe. But that's just me. That's just me. It's always 3, and then everybody knows it's always 3.
I'd rather
You'd rather be a little bit of a mystery.
I do. I like people because I want you to want to get to each other.
Right.
I don't want you to. We got 3 rounds. I don't want that.
Right.
I want to pretty much strip the metagame away from that piece.
Right.
Piece. Yeah.
The cleric healing that we had, which
and by the way, before you go on, back to the death rule. That can also be DM's choice.
Right.
If you run it, you can say it's just 3. Don't worry about it. Right. If I run it, I ain't telling you nothing. You might be dead the next round. You better figure it out.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the cleric healing was just enough.
Okay.
Kept it interesting without being able to keep you going all day without really worrying about stuff.
Yeah.
And there wasn't very much of it because we're only first level.
Yeah.
There was hardly any.
I gave you a lay on hands power 5 times your level. And it sounds like a lot, but it's really not when you got a whole party of adventurers. So we had 6 characters. We had 2 clerics. So we had 10 hit points worth of healing amongst the characters because clerics don't get spells. Well, clerics are going to have miracles in my game, but they don't get anything at first level. They're just glorified warriors.
If we didn't have those potions that were in there, it would have been probably a different story.
Yep.
Because some people
2 healing potions. Yep. But that was in the adventure. I literally didn't. I was like, I defaulted to healing potions. Seemed reasonable, and and I thought it was hilarious in the game. Just a side note, when Philip kept trying to egg those orcs to fight, and your wife was like, "What are you doing? You do know I have 5 hit points, right?"
Right. So, and some people want to fight everything and kill everything.
Yeah.
And I get why he did that, because he didn't want them to come back later on.
Right. And I think he wanted the chest. Well, you took the chest. You would have taken the chest anyway.
Yeah. I mean, if they would have left without fighting and we would have got the chest, most of us would have been fine with that. But there was a little part of me that wanted to whack the bad guys because, they're orcs. They're evil. They're going to go kill people. It doesn't make sense to let them walk around. But I also understand, let's avoid all the fights if we can.
The carrion crawler, I had forgot, but I remember now how powerful, how many low-level adventures, first and second, had carrion crawlers. And I remember even as a DM, and when I was younger, I was even more lethal. I'd be like, this is a player killer. This is a player killer monster at levels, even 1 to 3 or 4, because you have to make a saving throw.
Yes.
And they get 8 tentacle attacks. So when Philip's character was by himself in that one round, I'm like, you're paralyzed.
Yeah.
You're not going to make. And so I only had him hit him with 4 or 5, but I was like, you're not making 4 or 5 saving throws, not at 17 or higher or 15 or higher, or whatever it was. No way.
Right. So we had half the party go down. Not dead. They were all, half the party got paralyzed.
And that was technically an optional encounter, except for the fact you had made an agreement with that guy. You guys stuck to your word as a group, though some people weren't wanting to. You said, we're going to clear out this mine for you. He said, kill everything that's bad. I want it cleaned out because I have claim to it.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys, well, we killed everything. And I made it sound like it could have been a dragon. I was like the worm. And it was a literal worm down in that elevator thing. And it was a carrion crawler worm type thing. And so, but yeah, that was almost this. I think that was probably the scariest fight.
Yeah, because we barely pulled that out.
That could have been a TPK. I think your wife made one of her saving throws with that.
Yeah.
I was like, when she got up there and a couple of characters weren't advancing, I'm like, dude, this thing's gonna slap the crap out of 2 meleeists.
Yeah.
Here, you each can have 3 tentacles. I was going to be nice and not give him a full 4. If another person comes up, I think you had 3 people, and I had him do all the tentacles. I'm like, he can slap the crap out of all you guys, make these multiple saves. And I think your wife made all of them, didn't she? Somebody made them all. Somebody fell.
I tried to get everybody to use their crossbows.
You did, and nobody listened.
Nobody.
That's so weird.
Except Jeff. Jeff tried it. But everybody else was like, yeah, I'm running up there now.
It's that's new school mentality.
Yeah.
If it's a monster, it must be CR appropriate. I don't know. For first level characters, carrion crawler is not really CR appropriate.
Right.
From any level. We'll see. I think that'll be dangerous for several levels, actually.
Right. And I think some people were like, I'm sure they were probably thinking, well, I can hit much harder with my melee weapon.
Mm-hmm.
But, they didn't get to use their melee weapon. So
they didn't think how many rounds how many shots you might have had on it before it got to you in melee.
Yeah.
And you guys, if you'd have walked in and spread out in the room and just fired.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think?
Stick and move. Could have done that.
What'd you think of my movement rules? I felt like I might need to modify that.
I thought they were fine.
Okay. You're good with it? Yeah. Move, attack, and move if you got more.
Yeah, I think I've always thought that was some arbitrary thing where once you attack, you can't move anymore.
And if you look at the RC, the Rules Cyclopedia, movement is one thing you can do. You can't move and attack.
Right.
You move
or attack. Now that would be a different story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and in that system, if it's an either or, then it's moot. But in a system where you can get some of your movement and you can attack at the same time in the same round, but once you attack, you have to stop moving, even if you've only moved 5 feet. It's kind of counterintuitive. But if the rule was move or attack or spell, all of those are ors.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Exclusive.
That's one way of doing it.
Now, I'll tell you this. I think that's poor. That seems weird because if you get initiative, you don't want to close because you get up there, they get to hit you, but you don't get to hit them.
Right. But to be fair, getting the initiative and running up into somebody's grill, even if you get a swing, isn't necessarily the smart move.
No, it's not.
I mean, depends on the situation.
Well, we can also experiment. We could go back and we could try the move, or we got the players that play, and I'm not envisioning just those 6 players being there when we play. I think we're gonna have other players.
Right.
And do you think we ought to consider, and this may go in the weeds here. I don't know do you have more stuff? I'm gonna just
that was it.
Okay.
Well, if we want to go into the weeds, we'll talk offline.
Yeah. Okay.
Or we might be able to at this point have a whole episode just about Mudsword at some point.
Oh, I wonder if folks will be at all interested in that after our next play test.
I know 2 who will.
Who?
Taylor.
Oh, Taylor
and Jason.
Oh, they both like Mudsword. That's 2.
Yeah,
that's true. But what they want to
pay us.
That's right. When we
Yes.
kickstart, we got that's like $1 million a piece. So we
Yeah.
got a 2 million Kickstarter for sure.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay. Good deal.
Good deal.
All right. All right.
So are
good
we
deal.
good?
I think we're good, man.
Yes, I think we're good. We've
Gotta
been
plug
at it
something up here.
for 2.5 hours again.
See, we can talk. There's no limit to our ability to talk.
No. This was born on your porch, though. This
It
podcast was born on your porch.
Yes, it was. My porch in Charleston, Indiana. Late nights, even during the school nights, staying up till 10 o'clock. Southern Indiana. Summers, we talk D&D on the swings. on
Well
my grandmother's
past.
porch.
Well past 10
Oh, especially on when we got older.
weekends. Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
weekends we were 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were D&D nutbags. Heck, we still are.
Yeah. All righty. With that, it is time for our shameless plug.
Yes, we like to do that.
If you'd like to support our show, please help get the word out and check out our website at biggestgeekspodcast.com and go over to that support tab. Consider supporting our show.
Yeah.
You can also just spread the word. That's fine as well. Get more ears on our show. That's great.
But hey, can I say, if Taylor and Jason want to drop a few hundred thou just to kind of build up the war chest for the Kickstarter, that's fine.
That's fine. We will accept.
We'll accept it. Yeah, graciously.
We are on Odyssey and YouTube. Links in our show notes. Please rate us in your podcatcher of choice.
Mhm.
And if you want to send us a note, email is thegeeks@biggestgeekspodcast.com. We will read your note.
We will, and might even respond to it.
Might even respond. Maybe.
Maybe.
Definitely will read it. And we didn't have any this week, I checked. Except some automatic things that don't matter. So also, we'd like to encourage you to check out some podcasts and other things that we have listed in the show notes. Among them, podcasts that we've mentioned with Taylor's, Clerics or Ringmail, the podcast that I've really had a hard time remembering, A Tale of Manticore, all that kind of stuff is in our show notes.
Speaking of Red Dice and Big John, Red Dice Diaries, I liked the Gathering episode. Did you hear that this week?
I did not. I'm way behind on everything.
Hannah talked about the LARP they go to every year. It actually sounded halfway decent. That could be kind of fun because it's not a terribly serious one, So, but I mean,
right.
I'm not much of a LARP guy, but it sounded kind of cool. They have a lot of rules and stuff. I need to comment. I thought that was really interesting. Hannah talked about her experience. It was good.
Go listen to The Gathering.
Yes, it's good. It's a good episode.
Red Dice Diaries. Good stuff.
Yep.
And with that, anything else?
Nada.
All right. This is Joe.
And I'm Randy.
And remember, if you can't be big like us, then be geeks like us.